to hold, and we'll be with you shortly.
Thank you for holding. How can I be of service to you today?
Yes, I have this recurring charge on my monthly statement, and I can't figure out what it's for.
Well, we'll certainly do our best to help you. What does the charge say on your statement?
Well, it's a $275 charge, and it just says Iraq War.
Yes, ma'am, that is correct. The Iraq War cost the average American family over $16,000 since the war started.
Are you kidding? Well, I never signed up for that.
I'm sorry, ma'am. You don't sign up for the Iraq War charge.
Tell me, have you enjoyed your war so far?
It's a standard charge for all Americans.
Have you gotten a picture of who they are?
Well, that doesn't make any sense.
Did some men in a cave knock down your tower?
While you're still in line, can I interest you in our new monthly Iran War charge?
No,
Are you gonna behave or lay next to flowers?
Thanks for calling the United States.
Wake up, sleepyhead. It's after 8, you're late, get out of bed. Fuck what a spectator said. Scientific dictatorship straight ahead. Rise and shine, sleepyhead. It's after 8, you're late, get out of bed. This is a bucket of water on your head, you're asleep. You might as well be dead.
Thanks for holding. How can I help you today?
Yes, I've been on the phone over and over with you guys trying to get this recurring charge for the Iraq War off my statement.
Iraq was just an hors d'oeuvre, do you understand?
$16,500 my family's paid so far since the war began.
They are openly planning to neuter Iran.
I just can't afford to pay it anymore. I've lost my job.
Do you like to see children get killed in your name?
Well, I'm sorry to hear that, but that doesn't mean you get to stop paying the charge.
When you're paying your taxes, you're playing their game. You better wake up. Wake up, sleepyhead. It's after 8, you're late, get out of bed. Fuck what a spectator said. Scientific dictatorship straight ahead. Rise and shine, sleepyhead. It's after 8, you're late, get out of bed. This is a bucket of water on your head, you're asleep. You might as well be dead.
But we're making America safer. We have to fight them over there.
Will you ever just stop and listen to what you're saying?
No, sir. It's against company policy.
Iraq was just an hors d'oeuvre. Do you understand? I can't sing like William Sweeney, Payday Monsanto, but I can surely do a radio show equivalent to the quality of the content of the music that you just heard. That's a very, very old song. I used to listen to that when I was in film school 15 years ago, 16 years ago. Iraq was just an hors d'oeuvre. Do you understand? They are openly planning to neuter Iran. Well, welcome to the Secret Teachings, a special Sunday night edition, U.S. time. It is already Monday afternoon here in the land of the rising sun, the land of Nippon or Japan, where I am located here on the other side of the world. I appreciate you tuning into the broadcast on short notice. This is not, N-O-T, not a video show, although tonight's episode is in video format. You will be able to listen and watch tonight's show, but the main audience, of course, is in the audio-only archive via Spreaker, Apple, Spotify, etc. You can find all of that at tstradio.info. If you'd like to email the show tonight, rdgable, rdgable@yahoo.com. Both the website and the email are scrolling at the bottom of the screen. There are links below on the video show and in the audio shows, unless you're listening on groundzeroplus.com, in which case you will have to go to our website or the show page at groundzeroplus.com, which we have an affiliation with. Otherwise, we are independent. And one of the primary reasons we are independent is because of Iran. Did you know that The Secret Teachings is now an independent show because of Iran? It is because of Iran, and it is because of my, you can call it liberal if you'd like, but my general stance of not having regime change wars. It is my general stance, and has been for my entire politically observant life, that I don't like regime change wars. And although sometimes in certain circumstances, under certain circumstances, war is necessary, realistically, the war drums for Iran have been beating for decades, even before I was born. And what is happening now is the result of a stress test in 2025 to see how the public would respond and to see how probably the Iranians would respond. And it's also the byproduct of decades of war drums beating and banging. And it indicates and shows us that we have crossed the line, the Rubicon. We've crossed the river, and there is no going back. The long-range, long-term implications and consequences are unknown outside of algorithmic computer simulation predictions, which I'm sure also had something to do with the 2026 bombing here in this new year, as well as they did last year in 2025, quite literally letting artificial intelligence and Israeli algorithms determine when we should strike the Iranians. But anyway, The Secret Teachings is independent because of Iran. Because a couple of years ago, The Secret Teachings was removed from a radio network called Aftermath. And we were removed from that network because I used my platform once in a while, every couple of shows, depending on what was in the news. I used my platform to advocate for no war with Iran. And this wasn't something that was necessarily a story at all, let alone a big story in 2024. Very few people were talking about war with Iran in 2024. Most people were talking about the stolen election and how Trump is going to become president again. And it's so great. And we're so excited and we're going to save the country. And I did a couple of shows. I did a show called Master Race to Armageddon. It Takes Two to Tengu. And it was a mixture of Eastern demonology, yokai from Japan, a little bit of European World War II history, a little bit of global history. And that show in particular was targeted by the network, and I was told to remove it from their platform, even though I didn't have access to their platform. They're the ones that put it up. My show was running separately from that. And then I did another show, a follow-up to that, a 1-hour show called Hexagram Handlers. And on both of those shows, all I did was play clips. You can go back and listen to them. I've uploaded them in the Secret Teachings archive as a best of both episodes just over the weekend. And I stuck them up there on the archive so you can listen to the beginning. You can hear exactly what was said on those shows, 2024, and why the show was removed from Aftermath Media at the time. And all I did was play clips of incoming Trump administration officials stating their opinions on the United States of America and a foreign country called Israel. And when I did those shows, I had no intention, in that 4-hour special I had no intention of making it about Iran. But as I played the clips, I started to realize on air, in real time, live, there was a pattern emerging. And I won't play all the clips for you again tonight because it's redundant. You can listen to those clips in the best of compilation that I've uploaded prior to this show tonight. But the point is, all of those clips said, well, Israel's really near and dear to my heart, more than the United States, said Dan Bongino, the sellout traitor piece of subhuman garbage. People like Kash Patel, who I think has seen more than one ghost, and maybe the barrel of a gun as well. Kash Patel, who is also sleeping with a girl who is connected to Israeli intelligence, 8200 unit. Kash Patel said that we need to prioritize Israel above American interests, another sellout, traitor piece of subhuman garbage. And then we went through a list of clips from even Tulsi Gabbard, the anti-war girl, who suddenly was just literally repeating talking points about how we have to bomb Iran, like that old John McCain song, "Gonna bomb Iran, bomb, 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 bomb Iran." Even if Iran needed to be bombed, I mean, that's kind of just objectively psychotic. But if you say that, you must hate America. And I played a bunch of other clips too. I played clips of Pete Hegseth calling for a new crusade and saying that Islam isn't compatible with the United States, which you can feel that way. Sure, that's okay to feel this way. But the problem is, if I choose that if I wanted to convert to Islam, I have a constitutional right to convert to Islam. I have a constitutional right to convert to Buddhism. I have a constitutional right to not practice any religion. You can't compel me to practice those religions, and you can't stop me from practicing those religions. So I watched the incoming Secretary of Defense /War tell us that we're going to wage a new crusade, and then I also followed that up later by showing that Alex Jones on InfoWars was literally selling Crusader gear. You can see that on InfoWars, their website. And I played a list of other clips from Trump officials, and virtually every one of them are either Jewish or hardcore Zionist. And even if those labels had no meaning, they were all calling for war with Iran. And I thought, oh, well, Trump's going to win big, and then we're going to go to war with Iran. And I realized that in real time on the show and said it, and that was just not taken very well by the network. And so because of Iran, the Secret Teachings is now independent. So I can actually thank Iran, and I can actually thank that previous network for doing what they did, because the show has actually become, at least in terms of the back end numbers and the people I talk to, has become more successful in the ways that are positive to me than it ever has been before, which tends to happen every time we get removed from a network, which we've been removed from many networks. So what I want to do tonight on the show is I want to show you some screenshots that I took of news articles rather than scrolling through all these articles and all the advertisements. I just want to show you little bite-sized pieces of information. And we're going to play some clips as well. And I'm going to attempt to lay out on the table, not a theory, but a proof of I'm not even sure if it would be called a theory, but a hypothesis that I've had. And that hypothesis is that the optics are being created, the optics are being presented of Armageddon, of the apocalypse. And the conditions are being created to convince 2 billion Christians, 2 billion Muslims, that the world is coming to an end, and that there needs to be the final war, an Armageddon, and it's all necessary for the fulfillment of prophecy, which, by the way, prophecy is usually extracted from various different texts and various different interpretations of texts and various different translations of those texts, and then various different denominations of a particular religion, and then it becomes part of the kind of pop culture of a religion. And then people are like, oh, I know that. That's the prophecy. And the prophecy is like 50 different verses from 50 different books, from 50 different translations, from 50 different denominations, and they all have their own interpretations. So it really isn't such a thing as prophecy in the assumed definition of the word, but that's almost another subject. But it is a pretty important part of tonight's show, because as you might be able to tell already from the show description or from the promo, tonight's show is called Apocalypse of Esther. And if you don't know what Esther is, scroll of Esther, do a little bit of research on that. And by research, I just mean typing into the internet Book of Esther and typing in what the original term means. And the original term comes from Hebrew Hesther with an H, and it means hidden. And the scroll of Esther is the scroll of what is hidden. And to open that scroll is to open what is hidden. And in Greek, there's another name for that. In Greek, to reveal what is hidden is the apocalypse. And it is from the Book of Esther that we obtain the Jewish holy day of Purim, which the Jews are reminded in the book of Deuteronomy to honor and never forget. And in the book of Esther, we get the story of Purim, which is the story of the Jews defeating a Persian threat. Iran is, in essence, both symbolically and then partly literally, the descendant of that Persian threat. In other words, they're literally carrying out biblical, religious, ritual reenactments. They're literally carrying out blood sacrifices to their God. I don't care what you choose to call it. I don't care what you choose to accuse me of or call me. It's just a fact. And that's all I'm concerned with. It's just a fact that the Book of Esther, or the Scroll of Esther, translates to and means that which is hidden, and the story of Purim and what's in the Book of Esther, which is metaphoric and allegorical, refers to the things that are hidden being revealed. And that is compounded by a sixth planet, corresponding to the 6 points of the hexagram, a six planetary alignment that occurred quite literally within the same, and you couldn't see all of it with the naked eye. You'd have to have a telescope or be in the right place, but occurring quite literally within the exact time frame of those bombs exploding in Iran on the 28th of February. I'm sure that's a coincidence as well. I'm sure that just hours before the Jewish holy day of Purim, which is a story about the overcoming of a Persian threat after the escape from Egypt. And I don't know if you could really call it an escape considering who the Hyksos might have been, but that's another story. They take a planetary alignment. They take, and by they, I mean the established order that organized all of this. Your Witkoffs and your Kushners, for example. Witkoff, the one who is overseeing the Ukrainian negotiations, and Kushner, who is overseeing both the quote negotiations and the reconstruction plan for Gaza, were the two people that were overseeing negotiations with the Iranians. Two total psychotic, subhuman pieces of garbage that are beyond demonic and evil, debating and discussing and negotiating with the Iranians. And once again, like in 2025, breaking the negotiations to bomb the country, which no matter what you think or what you feel, it's just kind of objectively true that, you know, if you've done this to a country one time, it gives you a pretty bad reputation. If you've done it twice in less than a year, if you've told a country we're going to negotiate, and even if negotiations don't go well, in the middle of negotiations, before they're even halted, and you say, all right, well, we can't figure anything out, I guess it's war. That didn't happen. No, what happened in 2025 and 2026 is they were at the table talking when the bombs fell. That just shows that you can't trust the United States. That shows that you can't trust the negotiators. And I think that's also part of the underhanded, undermining effort of Israel to discredit and demean the United States, because it's just never enough. The support is never enough. And so I think that with the planetary alignment and Purim approaching this week, the first few days of March, to celebrate the defeat of a Persian enemy, It just so happens to be that during this planetary alignment with planets that align with the 6 points of the hexagram, that's the 6-pointed star, it just so happens to be that the Book of Esther, which is where we get the Purim story, also happens to, in Hebrew, translate to something that is equivalent to the Greek word apocalypse, which is the unveiling of nature. It is the changing of the seasons, and it has much to do with the soul being dormant in the body in the same way that the seed is dormant in the winter. Those are the mysteries of Greece. Those are the mysteries of Persia. Those are the mysteries of the Celtic peoples and the mysteries of the Egyptian peoples and the mysteries of the Mithraic cult in Rome and other versions of the Mithraic cult, which were originally Persian and not so Romanized. But that's what this is about. It's a cult ritual. And by cult, I mean like an actual, not an occult. It's a cult ritual. It's a blood sacrifice, and it corresponds to the moment of almost. I mean, it may have been the moment of. I don't know how you can calculate that with planetary alignments, but pretty close to the moment of planetary alignment that aligns with the 6-pointed star and the ritual lead up to Purim, celebrate the defeat of Persians, which is who they just bombed. Now, I don't think anybody in their right mind, if given that information, could say that that's a coincidence. I don't think anybody in their right mind could look at that and then honestly proceed forward in life and engage in any kind of discussion online or in person about the subject and not have that nagging at them in the back of their mind, even if they don't fully understand it. You have to understand that this is based on religious ideology, theological ideology, eschatology, apocalyptical ideology, which again relate to the seasons and the soul. Those are the lesser and greater mysteries, respectively, of ancient Greece. But if they're interpreted literally, they bring us war. And this is exactly why the Secret Teachings was removed from that previous network over Iran, because I sat here and tried to explain that this is exactly what was going to happen, not because I'm intelligent, not because I'm brilliant, not because I'm a prophet. I surely am not. Not because I have insiders, not because I have contacts, not because I have people that are giving me secret information. I don't have any of that. I'm not talking to God. I'm not talking to archangels. I'm not a prophet. I don't have access to secret data. All I've done is spent my life educating myself on symbols, theology, mythology, archetypes, etc. And when I see them playing out in the real world, I make observations of them. And that's where we are right now. That's where the Secret Teachings is, and that's where all of you are. But it is unfortunate. It's unfortunate because I want listeners, we'll go to the chat room here in just a moment. I want listeners to support the show, and I want listeners to get a copy, especially now, sadly so, of my new book, Protocols of Goyim. I would like people to support the show. I'd like people to get a copy of the book. I would like people to support the show and keep us on air. But the thing is, I feel really bad. I don't feel right about it. Listener in the chat, the Cub said, Ryan, as soon as I heard of the bombings, I bought your new book. The knowledge is more important now than ever. I agree with that, but it's sad that bombing another country has forced me to tell people, hey, if you really kind of want to get an objective point of view on what's happening, you could read this book. And then I'm selling a book on the back of what is happening. And that just feels wrong. But it is important. If you read this book, you will understand what is happening. It is a very large book. I just finally got my copy, my original copy in the mail here. It is over 800 pages, size 10 font. It is a massive compilation filled with resources and filled with information that if you didn't know it, it'll change your perspective on a lot of different things. I appreciate that in the chat, Luciferian. Love the new book title. Protocols of Goyim, a Kosher Conspiracy. That's the new book. But I don't want to promote it because it just feels sleazy, feels wrong. And I see this happening a lot in media. I see this happening a lot in social media with influencers. People that maybe just aren't approaching it in a way that is, I'm trying to be, I don't know if I'm being humble, but I'm trying to be humble. Like I did tell you this was going to happen quite explicitly in 2024, not because I'm smart or a prophet or talking to God or have contacts or sources, but just because it was very clear based on the direction or what the patterns, what the information was saying. You know, I don't have computers telling me that there's going to be an alien invasion next month like Cliff High, who's consistently wrong so many times that you really have to have brain damage to continue listening to the guy. You know, I'm not basing it on algorithms or simulations. It's just based on what is the belief system of the people involved? What is the motivation behind the propaganda and these talking points? It's very clear. And that's why I can tell you 2 years ago, the Trump administration would take us to war with Iran. It doesn't matter what you think about it, whether it's good or bad. It's just a fact. We'll take us to war with Iran, and it is going to be crafted to appear as if, even if, and I did say this more than anything else, it is going to be subconscious, the apocalyptic imagery. And that is precisely what Purim in the Book of Esther, that is precisely what this already is. And we're barely a few days into it. That's what it is. It is an apocalyptic vision. Now, the ultimate goal is to utterly obliterate the faiths of the Christians collectively and the faiths of the Muslims collectively. That's already been done by creating extremist, radical, literal interpretations of Muslim ideology and theology and etc., to turn Islam into something that it's not, and Christianity into something that it's not, and hey, even Judaism into something that it's not, in order to create the conditions by which all competition will be destroyed, and then there will be a singular authority that will rise to power, and many would call that the Antichrist. But before that happens, Muslims have to be defeated, Christians have to be defeated, and, well, Edom has to be destroyed. And Edom is the United States, in the same way that in the Book of Esther, the Persian threat is just generationally drawn down into the Iranians, and you know, they're the threat. Let's attack them and defeat them right before Purim, as a reminder of how our ancestors did the same thing. It's quite remarkable, actually. And you really do have to give these people, all of them, whomever they are, from Kushner to Trump to everybody in between, you really have to give them credit. You really have to give them props, because it's to be able to do it, and to do it so blatantly that people like me, who ultimately is a nobody, can see it so clearly. I mean, it really is a remarkable thing. Let's go to the chat room. We have a lot of listeners in the chat. Thank you, Luciferian, and thank you, Friend Coit, for the book compliments. I appreciate that. They both said great title for the new book. Let me go through the chat room real fast here, since we are in a video stream tonight. Mojo is here from Maui. Hello in Maui. Aloha. For you, I think it would be, what is it, afternoon, evening? So, konbanwa from Japan. Thank you for joining us. Jackie is also here. Hello, Jackie. Jackie asked about Purim. Jackie said, Ryan, do you know much about the Jewish holiday celebration over the next few days in regard to overthrowing Persia? I've given you a little bit of an explanation on that. We'll go into more details a little bit later on in the show, Jackie. Jello Putin is also here. Boomer Sooner is here. Hello, Boomer Sooner. Yes, that song that I played at the beginning, that was Payday Monsanto. He does not do music anymore. I spoke to him recently. He's having a little bit of a hard time, I think, in life, but he did that song way over a decade ago. Have you enjoyed your war so far? Do you get the picture of who they are? That's a great line. And that's a good question. Do you get the picture of who they are? It should be pretty clear by now. My good friend Teresa from the land of hockey and maple syrup is here. Hello, Teresa. Thank you for tuning in tonight. Rita is also here. Hello, Rita. I know Rita is usually listening via Facebook. Thank you for tuning in, Rita. Gnarly Sheen, thank you for tuning in tonight. Yes, those clips were very anti-Semitic of people stating things that aren't edited. Of course they are, yes. I know he's obviously joking. I see AI crash camera in the chat. Well, what did you... Oh, maybe he's talking to somebody else, or she's talking to somebody else. What did you say? He's talking to somebody else there. Let me go back through this list. The Cube finally made it to a live chat. Thank you. Or the Cub, excuse me, finally made it to a live chat. Thank you for joining us. Brundledon is here. Patel constantly looks like he was just told what'll be done to him if he doesn't cover up an Israeli child trafficking network. Yes, that is accurate. And Dan Bongino, whatever they did to him, he left and is now just kind of going through the motions and telling us things that we knew 15 years ago. Mac Thomas, war is peace, freedom is slavery, ignorance is strength. It is and always will be 1984. We have always been at war with Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, Libya, Iran. Always been at war. It never ends. Also in the chat room tonight, Amber Geddon is here. Hello, Amber Geddon. Thank you for joining us in the chat tonight. And a couple of more listeners here. Leonard is here. Good evening, Leonard. Finn is here. They're playing out a mystery play. That is accurate. It is akin to the lesser and greater mysteries of Greece, performed in Ulysses. Who else do we have? Mistos Dokos is here. Good evening, everyone. Always down for another TST Live. Hope all are well considering the state of things. I'm doing well. I'm shocked not by what happened. I'm shocked by the support for what happened. But I don't really think, after I've given it a few days, I don't really think the support is as substantial as I initially thought. We'll get to that too. Hetus Farius is here. Hello from North Carolina, they said. Hello. David Quest is here. Quist is here. Hello, David. Arcanum is here. Hello. Appreciate you joining us in the chat room tonight. A couple of other listeners. Noka is also here from down there somewhere southwest of the United States on an island. As well as, who else do we have in here? Saw another one. Agorist Alex. Folks ain't ready for what's coming. Well, I think that, I don't know if there's something else that's coming. I think like this is what was coming, but there might be more. Stay tuned. It is a blood moon, Alex said. And who else do we have? My name is Happy. Hello, welcome to the show. No, I will not be touching on that story that you asked me about in the chat tonight. I don't know anything about it. And frankly, when stories like that get popular overnight, I tend to lose interest because I don't trust it, which is another reason I don't just jump on the air as soon as the bombs fall, because everybody has their view and I let people say things and then I come in and try to analyze it through the lens that I choose to analyze things through, which is I don't really trust anybody or anything or any source of information. But with that being said, let us go to some sources of information. Let's go to some of these screenshots that I pulled up. I wanted to show you this, for the record, was the email, and I blacked out whited out the email, the actual email address, so that you can't, I'm not doxing the person. But this is from the Aftermath people, where they told me to remove those episodes of the Secret Teachings because they went against, quote unquote, Rovitics Media's content strategy and corporate values, yet they refused over dozens of emails to explain what those values were, refused to explain what I had actually said that was against those values. I was also told what I did was illegal. No explanation on what law I broke or why it was illegal, or even what I said to base that comment on. And those episodes included hexagram handlers and master race to Armageddon. You can listen to those in the Secret Teachings archive now. And another episode they told me to take down was called A Fascist is Worth 1,000 Words. And that was an episode about the Roman Empire. But I guess because I read Bible verses on that show, I'm not allowed to do that either, which shows you again that the Bible is, and that was done through a Canadian company. You can see both in Canada and the US, the Bible is illegal. And despite the fact that I am not a Christian, I have a copy of the Bible right here. I have an old Knights Templar Bible. And what you look at when you look at the Templar Bible, like any Bible, is a very important book. In the same way that I've got a nice little copy here of the Quran. Why? Because I want to know what it says. In the same way that if you look at my bookshelf, I've also got a copy of the original edition of Mein Kampf, because I want to know what was actually written in the book, rather than listening to what the media tells me, or listening to what religious bigots tell me, or listening to what idiots, quite frankly, tell me. I want to read the actual book, and I do. And find a lot of things when I read the books that are totally contrary to what I've been told they say, which is, again, why I like to go to the source. So anyway, that's the email. That's the original email. You got to take this content down, and that's because of Iran, and that's why we're independent. Here's the episode back in 2024, a 4-hour special, hour number 2. The double-digit Zionists selected by the incoming U.S. presidential administration and the motif of their hatred for Islam and Iran, some of whom want a modern crusade against Israel's enemies and global conflict in the name of Christ. Wow, that was pretty significant, wasn't it? That statement, that show, considering that that's exactly what we see now, a bunch of Zionists and Trump administration officials, and Islam's bad, Iran's bad, and we need a new crusade, and Christ is king, right? I don't have insiders. I'm not special. I'm not unique. I just am honest. And when you're honest, you tend to get things right when the evidence is overwhelming. Let's go to PBS, or pick any source of information. It really doesn't matter, but I pulled up a PBS article here. This is from February 28th. The day of the attack. It says this: members of Congress demand swift vote on war powers resolution after Trump orders Iran strike without congressional approval. Now, unlike last time when we were told, well, the president has the authority to carry out certain strikes if he thinks, if he believes, if he has intel where it's necessary to do so, and that's the presidential authority and power. It's not a war, it's just a preemptive strike. Well, that might have worked on both idiots and people that are legally and lawfully liberal with their views on such things. But it doesn't work now, because the official declaration of war with Iran and recent, in the last 24 hours of this show recording, recent reports from the White House are that this war will go on for weeks, which means that it's not a strike, it is a war, and the president received 0 congressional approval for the war, which is illegal. And even if we are going to say that we support what is happening in Iran, I don't care if it's right, wrong. I don't care if it's good or bad. What I care about is, at the very least, pay some lip service to the optics of the constitutional republic that you took and swore an oath to God to defend. At the very least, go through the motions of going to Congress, videoing it and putting it online. Look, I went to Congress, I asked them, they said it was okay. Virtually everybody in Congress, with few exceptions like Thomas Massey, Rand Paul, are so compromised through money, blackmail, threats by Israel and the Mossad anyway, they're going to all almost unanimously vote for war regardless. The fact that they just do it with no attempt to make it at least appear like they're following the law shows you that they have zero regard for the law, zero regard for the public, zero regard for the country, this country, and all the regard for the foreign country that drives this with the compromise, the blackmail, the bribery, etc. This tells you all you need to know. And it's virtually identical to what happened with Iraq. Remember that? Remember Iraq? Here's PBS News. Back in 2002, Bush aides say congressional approval not needed for Iraq attack. So we're now literally just repeating history 20-something years later. We don't need congressional approval for Iraq. We don't need congressional approval for Iran. I remember Ron Paul, former congressman, saying something to the effect of, when Congress did finally discuss and debate Iraq, there were few members of Congress who could even find Iraq on a map. And yet most of them were in support of bombing Iraq. This shows you that it's not just a disrespect for the law. It's not just a disrespect for the American public. It's not even a matter of something maybe kind of moral. It's just people that genuinely have no consideration for anything but themselves. Whatever the motivation is behind, let's just bomb them. I don't even know where they are, but drop the bombs, is downright anti-human. It's demoralizing, dehumanizing, demeaning to other human beings. And when you do that to other human beings, you are doing that to yourself. And the amount of propaganda, the amount of disgusting, repulsive, vile, gross, and frankly, literally by definition, anti-Semitic propaganda that is on social media is enough where I have now finally, when I woke up this morning, I told myself, I am deleting my X from my phone. I am only going to access it on my computer. I cannot physically stomach the amount of vile, disgusting, and repulsive anti-Arab, anti-Islam propaganda. If you said a fraction of the things about Israel or Jews that you say about Arabs or Muslims, you would be obliterated from the internet. Or you would be reduced at the very least to where I am on the internet. Virtually invisible. I mean, imagine saying things like, we should deport all the Muslims. We should deport all the Jews. We should shut down all the mosques. We should shut down all the synagogues. We should ban halal food. We should ban kosher food. We should arrest, we should interrogate, we should jail, prosecute all the Muslims. They're all terrorists. All right, well, we should arrest, we should jail, we should prosecute, and we should do all the same things to the Jews. If one of those things sounds acceptable to say and the other one doesn't, you have a problem. If one of those things is acceptable and the other one is considered anti-Semitic, even though one of the groups is actually Semitic and the other group is not generally, can't even say specifically whether or not they are Semitic, you have a problem. It is disgusting. It is vile. If you showed images of Jews having sex with animals, how long do you think that would last? But you can show as many pictures of deformed looking AI generated Arabs having sex with goats. Totally fine, no problem. Which is also kind of funny too, because you say, well, the Muslims have sex with kids. Well, yeah, but a kid is a goat, so is it a goat or is it a child? Which one is it? And furthermore, if you were to compare the religious traditions of the Jews, the Christians, and the Muslims, they're not any different. And if you say, well, the Quran or, well, the Bible says this or that or that, I mean, if you read the Bible, you read the Quran, you can find plenty of things that are not only similar, they're coming from the same source in the sense that women should be modest, in the sense that food should be blessed, in the sense that there should be fasting. Look at the way that Ramadan was treated over the last couple of weeks. Oh, these Muslims, they don't even practice the fast correctly. Once the sun goes down, they eat. That's not a fast. It's like, no, that's literally the definition of a fast. And I've performed Ramadan with friends of mine from the so-called Middle East, and that was kind of the whole point. We got together after the sun went down and we had dinner. That's how it all works. That's how fasting works. And the Catholics have the black fast, and the Christians used to fast. I don't know if they fast much anymore, maybe during Lent, same time frame that the Ramadan celebration is held on. And by the way, the Jews also have not only the kosher, like halal, but they also have traditions of fasting. It's a pretty universal thing. Now, I don't want to take too much time to address things like this, but I do want to address one comment in the chat room from a Brady Walker. And I'm not sure if he's being sarcastic or if he's being serious, but I do want to address this. He says, Ryan, you are an Islam apologist defending a leader that just killed 100,000 of his own people for protesting. I'm glad that you brought that up, Brady. I'm glad that you brought that up for several reasons. Number one, even if I were an Islam apologist, which I highly doubt that anybody could actually define what that means, because I'm assuming your interpretation of Islam or definition of Islam apologist is that I'm pointing out that kosher and halal are the same thing conceptually, or that fasting is performed by both Muslims and Jews and Christians, pointing out that these religions all share very similar motifs. But okay, defending a leader that just killed 100,000 of his own people for protesting. Number one, that is the same argument that we've heard about Gaddafi. It's the same argument we heard about Saddam. It's the same argument we heard about Ahmadinejad for years. It's the same argument we heard about Bashar al-Assad. It's the same argument we've heard over and over and over and over and over and over again. I don't care if he killed 200,000 of his own people or if he killed 1 million of his own people. If we were to say that's true, I don't care. It's not my problem as an American. That's number one. Number two, I don't care how many people, if we assume, we believe that he killed. The fact is, the Trump administration said, we will not be involved in a regime change war, and yet lied just like Woodrow Wilson and lied just like the slob FDR. And we were lied to repeatedly about this. Over and over again about this. I don't care if the supreme leader of Iran was blowing the Pope. I don't care if he was giving rim jobs to goats. It is not our fucking business or our fucking problem to spend more American money and more American lives fighting wars for a foreign country that worships quite literally the Christian conception of fucking the devil. It is not our fucking problem. It is not our fucking responsibility. No more of our money and no more of our blood, even if it wasn't for a foreign country like Israel. No more American money and no more American blood. For the same story of weapons of mass destruction and terrorism. And furthermore, protests in Iran. They killed protesters. It's interesting that you would use that as an argument because we know for a fact that much of the agitation there in Iran was actually conducted by the Mossad. Did you know that? That the Mossad was involved in creating protests and riots in Iran. They were the agent provocateurs in Iran. In fact, the Iranians arrested several Mossad agents. One of them fully prosecuted, and I believe they may have even sentenced them to death. because the Mossad was heavily involved in sparking and running those protests. And if you want to base it on numbers like 100,000, great. I'm glad that you brought up that number. Anybody who does, I'm so happy that you bring up the number 100,000. Because where do you get that number from? Where does that source come from? We'll play the same game that we played in Gaza. You can't trust those sources of information on where that number comes from. Well, now it's confirmed that close to 100,000 have been slaughtered in Gaza just since 2023. Based on those numbers, Netanyahu should be executed in a drone strike. Based on those numbers, Tel Aviv should be turned into glass, like Randy Fine wants to do to Gaza and succeeded in doing to Gaza. Based on those numbers, Washington, D.C. should be turned to glass. It's the same kind of number game that people like to play with World War II. The death of hundreds of thousands of civilians, primarily Germans, but civilians, specifically civilians, in places like Dresden, that doesn't matter. 100,000 killed, burned to death, burned alive, mothers and fathers and children, not military, not governmental, in Tokyo, just prior to the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Then the hundreds of thousands that were murdered there. You never hear people from Japan complaining about that. My parents were killed in Hiroshima. Give me money. I want money. Like a greedy little weasel rat. Hundreds of thousands of Germans, actually tens of millions of Germans, raped and tortured and murdered after World War II had ended. One of the largest mass migrations in the history of the world, the flight and expulsion of the Germans, 14 million of them forced out of their homes and their lands so that space could be made for the Allies to set up and do with the land what they please, because, God is a real estate agent. So Brady and anybody else who thinks that and argues that, it is a lazy and it is a self-defeating and embarrassing argument. And quite frankly, shut the fuck up. And if you want to fight this war, then you go get yourself a gun at the Army surplus store. You hop on a plane and you fly to Iran and you go do the dirty work for Israel yourself. No more soldiers, no more American blood, no more American money being spent and wasted to fulfill the vision of religious zealots and so-called prophets who want to be immortalized like Netanyahu as the savior of the Jewish people. Fuck him, fuck you, fuck Trump, fuck the Democrats, and fuck anybody and everybody who is involved in this and who justifies this and who backs this and thinks this is just fine and it's okay. Don't miss the point. The point is you were told there would not be a regime change war over and over and over and over and over and over again. And once again, you were lied to, like Wilson lied and like Roosevelt lied. It's the same story over and over and over again. So thank you for bringing that to our attention tonight, Brady. I appreciate it sincerely because it allows me to have a piece of information that I can comment on when otherwise I might not have been able to fit it into the show tonight. And I'm not being sarcastic. I'm being very serious. It's not Islam apologist. It's Islam realist. What exactly is Islam? You won't read the book, so how do you know? I'm not a Muslim. I'm not a Democrat. I'm not a liberal. I'm not a conservative. I'm not a Christian. I'm not a Jew. I'm a human. That's the bottom line. And the fact that you can justify, anybody can justify, slaughtering people in the name of anything is as shameful as every Trump supporter should feel right now. Shame. You should put a paper bag on your fucking head and cover your red hat. You should be ashamed to walk out the door. You should be ashamed to walk down the street. You should be ashamed to post on social media. You should be more ashamed than the Democrats. And let me explain why you should be more ashamed than the Democrats. You should be more ashamed than the Democrats because the Democrats, on average, do apparently, based on surveys and statistics, have some mental disorders and might actually at the the top not so much, but at the bottom have lower IQs and lower overall awareness. Conservatives are supposed to be smarter. Conservatives are supposed to be more pro-American. I know the Democrats don't like me. I know the Democrats hate America. I know the Democrats were the party of slavery. I know the Democrats were the party of the Ku Klux Klan. I wrote a book on it called Liberty Shrugged, a very lengthy history book looking at the facts and the receipts and the evidence of all of that. But conservatives look me dead in the eye and say, no more war. No more spending your money. This is about America. And they tell me that over and over and over again, and they put me into a trance. They swing the little clock back and forth in front of me. America, America, America. First, first, first. No more money, no more blood. No more blood, no more money. No more foreign wars, no more regime change. And then when I fall asleep, they stab me in the goddamn back every fucking time. That's why the Republicans are worse than the Democrats, because I know that the Democrats hate me and hate the United States on average. But the Republicans are supposed to love the country. And in their arrogance and their pride, they sell us out every single time. Every single time. To be fair to Brady, you are right. Muhammad was a general and he created a system to conquer and take over. Well, you're wrong about the part that it was Islam. He created a system using Islam to take over. I actually would argue that Muhammad, considering that he was illiterate and received the word of God from an angel, rather than writing it himself, I would say that Muhammad himself probably misunderstood or didn't fully comprehend what he was being given, which takes the divinity out of it, which is fine by me because I'm not a Muslim. I don't really give a shit. And just like the Christians take things completely out of context, and just like the Jews take things out of context, just like the word Israel means everybody, and chosen people means everybody who's alive, every one of God's people, and Israel also means those who struggle with God, which is everybody, including Buddhists. I think they're all kind of fucked. But I think there's a lot of value in all of these religions as well. I think there's a lot of value in those systems. That's why I have their books on my shelf here. I don't have a copy of the Talmud because I don't want to risk it bursting into flames and burning my house down, but I do have a digital copy of the Talmud. And of course, I have the Torah and the Old Testament and all that too. So let me go back to the point here. Bush aides say congressional approval not needed for Iraq attack. That's 2002. Let's look at 2026. Members of Congress demand swift vote on war powers resolution after Trump orders Iran strike without congressional approval. It's wonderful how that works, isn't it? It's amazing. Brundledon in the chat said, former Trump supporter here in 2016, I really believed we had a chance for a peace president. Hell, I kind of kidded myself about that as recently as 2024. I'll take my paper bag now. See, I don't really want to shame people, so I'd say Brundledon, you don't have to put a paper bag on figuratively. It's okay to be duped. I have a lot of really close friends who feel the way that I do now, but they were voting for Obama, or if they voted for Trump, or I actually lost a lot of friends because I didn't vote for any of them. I said, well, Trump's probably better, but I wouldn't vote for him. I was actually fired from a job, I think, because they learned my political affiliation, which was non-affiliated, and I think they fired me because of that. Must have been a liberal, even though it wasn't a liberal. But you can't tell people who think it fallacies that. So Brundledon, don't feel bad. You were duped. Everybody was duped. The problem is we just keep getting duped and duped and duped. And my problem, where my real anger is the justification for it and the backing of it. That's my problem. The inability or the unwillingness to recognize that what I'm reading here on PBS is literally the same exact story 24 years apart. No congressional approval, who cares? Now let's get to something else here. This is Forbes. among other sources, and Forbes, among other sources, reports this. Iran plunges into near total internet blackout as epic fury strikes begin. This was February 28th. It is estimated that network data shows Iran is now in the midst of a near total internet blackout with national connectivity at 4% or ordinary levels, according to NetBlock, an independent internet watchdog monitoring cybersecurity and internet governance in real time. Now, why is that important? Well, it's important for one very simple reason. Because all those videos of attractive Persian women dancing and celebrating Iran being bombed. I don't think, first of all, that if maybe I'm just not a girl that likes to post on Instagram or social media, but like I'd assume that if my city was being bombed, the last thing I would do is set my camera up on my little nightstand and do a dance about how my country's being bombed and thank you, America. Those videos are being manufactured in a warehouse or being manufactured in some kind of facility in Tel Aviv or in Hollywood. Don't forget that the people that run the media on average are the people that run Hollywood. It says so in the Encyclopedia Judaica, so don't disagree with me or you're an anti-Semite. It's a fact. I learned that from a rabbi. And it's also factually verifiable, particularly in regard to now the Ellison buyouts and the Kushner attempt to take over Warner Brothers, which was originally set up by Jews as well. These are literally the entertainment industry people, the people that give us entertainment, fictional versions of reality. They are filming that stuff in a warehouse, in a studio in Tel Aviv or in Hollywood, or they might have one set up in Iran. Nobody, people might film like, oh my God, they're bombing us. Right? They might do that, but nobody is looking in a mirror, putting on their makeup, put on my eyeshadow. Well, David Wilcock does that a lot on streams, but putting on, it's a little comedy relief. Putting on the makeup, make sure my eyeshadow looks good. All right, make sure I have a tight skirt on so people can see my ass and make sure my tits are popping out a little bit. I'm going to do a dance. Ready? All right, 3, 2, 1. Do a dance, and then they put text. Iran is being bombed. I'm so happy the U.S. is finally saving us because all the girls there want to do is dress like whores and sluts. I mean, and the Iranians are stopping them from dressing like OnlyFans girls, so we got to bomb them. It's just utterly ridiculous. They have 4% internet. Where are these videos and how are these videos getting onto social media globally? Facebook, X, Instagram, TikTok, these are all run by Jews. They're not run by Muslims. Do you think that the Jews that run Facebook, like Mark Zuckerberg, Instagram, X is run by Musk. Actually, the content is curated by a company called Check, which Musk had a secret meeting with in Israel less than a year ago. CHEQ. And of course, TikTok with Ellison. Just like with the idea that they're not starving people in Gaza because there's a picture and the picture was proven fake. And meanwhile, Time Magazine is run by Jews and the Jews accidentally let Hamas propaganda through, even though Hamas is also financed by Israel. You know, think, McFly, think. All right, think. They don't have internet access. How are they getting these videos on the internet? Well, maybe one of Elon Musk's companies is helping. Also, they're spending precious resources and time finding videos of Iranian girls dancing like it's an OnlyFans behind the scenes, and they're extracting those from the country instead of important information, and then they're posting that on Western social media. It's like when Netanyahu speaks in English, and people are like, oh, that's what he actually told the people of his country. It's like he doesn't talk to them in English. He speaks in English to the Western audience. It's nonsense. And that's just the bottom line. Just the bottom line. They don't have internet. So how are they doing this? I mean, maybe I'm different, but like the few times there's been a small earthquake here, I don't grab my phone and film it. I usually like wait a second, and then if it feels like it's going to get bad, then I might grab my computer and run outside. Never really had to do that. My instinct is not to grab a phone and film it. And I highly doubt if bombs are falling on top of you that's going to be the first thing that you decide to do. It's fake. Just like the videos of all the people in Venezuela celebrating. I'm sure there's going to be half of any group that's going to celebrate. I mean, if Washington, D.C. tomorrow got nuked, half the country's going to celebrate, half the country's going to be very, very, very sad and upset. If you bomb Iran, I'm sure there's going to be people that are really excited, and I'm sure there's going to be people that are really upset, which based on the actual videos, the real ones that weren't AI, the country's pissed, and you're going to have generations of Iranians who otherwise didn't understand. They grew up thinking, why do you hate Americans so much? Why do you hate the United States so much? I don't understand. Oh, they just killed my mom and dad. Fuck America. That's why. You didn't stop anything. You opened Pandora's box. A new generation of so-called terrorists, a new generation of people that are going to hate the United States, that are going to absolutely despise the United States. Say what you want, think what you want about Iran. The bottom line is, and the fact is, what the United States just did, on top of violating the trust of negotiations once more, is set the precedent for attacks on our own country and a long-term, ongoing, endless war that has no goal, that has no end date in sight. Yeah, Ryan, but I mean, look, they said that it's going to be a couple of weeks. Do I really have to explain this issue? Do I really, like, when's the last time you heard something like, it's just a couple of weeks? Just 2 weeks. Curb the spread. I can't help but think I've heard that somewhere. Have you heard that anywhere? I heard that. Where did I hear that? Oh, it was that pandemic thing, right? That's where I heard it. I heard it with the pandemic. 2 weeks, just 2 weeks, 2 weeks, 2 weeks, 2 weeks, 2 weeks. And then it turned into years. Here's a live update from CBS. Trump says Iran operation could take 4 weeks or less. 3 U.S. troops already killed. Great. Fantastic. Already spilled the blood of 3 Americans over this nonsense. Could last 4 weeks. Just 4 weeks. Just 4 weeks. Last time it was 2 weeks. This time it's 4 weeks to stop the Iranian terrorism. What is that word? Help me out here. I can't think of the word. What is the word for when you can't get what you want through diplomatic channels of any sort? And so you engage in acts of violence like assassinations, murders, bombings, etc., to then parlay and leverage your political opponents into giving you what you want. I'm pretty sure there's a word for that. Can anybody tell me what the word is? The last time I checked, the definition of that word, or the word I'm looking for, that's the definition. It's called terrorism. Yes, John in the chat, it is terrorism. Flux in the chat, it is terrorism. That's the definition of the word. At the very, 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 very least, what the United States did to Iran was an act of terrorism. well, they're not doing what we want them to do. So rather than even waiting until we get done with negotiations, we're just going to bomb them. That is literally the definition of terrorism. So, for example, if you are going to argue, well, we have to defeat this state-sponsored terrorism in Iran, don't get me wrong. I don't wave Iranian flags. I don't care about Iran. I care about the United States of America. And if you're going to argue we just took out the biggest sponsor of terrorism, one, you'd have to define what terrorism is, because remember, when you raise a generation of kids who have had their parents slaughtered by American troops, and they're raised to think that Americans, by their own experience, are quite evil and wicked, then that becomes terrorism, right? Like if, for example, a country were to invade, this used to be an old example Ron Paul would use, but if any country were to invade Los Angeles, and troops would be walking down the street and they would be going into people's homes and killing people and raping women, and if they were Israeli, they would be putting women's dresses on because they have a weird, sick perversion fetish for that. And if the people of Los Angeles got guns and fought back, they would be classified as terrorists by this country that had invaded. So that would be the first thing you'd have to do, is define what terrorism actually is. And that's not really terrorism. That's kind of like self-defense. Terrorism is when you say, all right, well, we can't get what we want during the current negotiations, or we don't get what we want through normal channels, so let's just engage in acts of violence. But Ryan, the definition that you've put on your screen says the unlawful use of violence and intimidation in pursuit of political aims. Did you already forget? CBS, or rather PBS News, rather. Members of Congress demand swift vote on war powers resolution after Trump orders Iran strike without congressional approval. Sounds pretty goddamn illegal to me. Sounds pretty foundationally, constitutionally illegal to me. An unlawful use of violence to intimidate in the pursuit of political aims. That's terrorism. So at the very least, what the Americans and the Israelis did to the Iranians is on par with anything the Iranians did. It's a stalemate. It's a draw. That's the idea of, you don't throw stones if you live in a glass house, right? I don't care what people do or say to justify it. That's just the depth. Do with it what you will. I don't care. Embody Crowley. Do what you will. That shall be the whole of the law. Do whatever you want to do with that information. It's just a fact. That's the definition of terrorism. So I just have a hard time understanding, if we're going to bomb them because of terrorism, and we're using terrorism to bomb them, then doesn't that give a right to any country, if they had the means, to then bomb us for the same exact reason? That's what Pandora's box is. You can't control it. And the fact that they killed the supreme leader of Iran, which, quite frankly, I don't know if I believe that or not. Whether the Iranians say it's true or not, I mean, you got to think of it from a couple of different points of view. Number one, the media that we get is completely scripted, and virtually everything, including all the alternative sources, are scripted or just outright lies based on personal, social, political, etc. bias. I don't believe that, because the same people telling me weapons of mass destruction are the ones telling me they killed the supreme leader. Then Iran finally says, oh, yeah, the supreme leader is dead. Okay, he's dead. Well, I mean, if you wanted to protect him, you might say he's dead, so they stop looking for him. I don't know what to believe. That's where the 1984 thing comes into play once again. I don't know. Is he dead? I don't know. And frankly, don't care. And this is the problem. It's another one of those problems. Let's look at another one of these pieces of propaganda. By the way, Trump also said there'll be more U.S. deaths, which normally they don't tell you that. It's like we went into Venezuela and we took care of these people in Venezuela, and then it turns out 2 choppers got hit, 12 soldiers were severely wounded. It's all posturing, it's flexing muscles, it's saber waving. It's like George Carlin's. It's a big prick waving contest. That's why you got Dick Cheney and Colin Powell and George Bush That's all that it is. U.S. soldiers got injured, but they said they didn't with Venezuela. In the case of Iran, they were like, yeah, a bunch of people probably going to get hurt. So I assume it's going to be really bad. So let's look at the Ayatollah's death here. Here's one of the clips or one of the little segments or little snippets that I pulled off the internet. This says, developing. Representative Tim Burchett weighs in on reports of the Ayatollah's death. Tim Burchett says this: they hung kids for tweets. They cut women's eyes out for wearing makeup. They threw gay folks off of buildings. They murdered Americans. Who will grieve for this dirtbag? Number one, you'd have to confirm that he actually said those things, Tim Burchett, because this is a stupid meme, very, very likely created by conservative Christian or Israeli Jewish ops and agents. Then you'd have to actually go and verify each one of these things. Did they actually hang kids for tweets? Did they actually cut women's eyes out for wearing makeup? Did they actually throw gay folks off of buildings? By the way, I come real close to the camera. I thought the Christians were okay with that. I thought that the Christians were very happy throwing gays off of buildings. They used to really hate those gays. I guess it's okay now because the liberal Jewish political system has convinced them that, it's Jesus would have wanted that. They murdered Americans. Who will grieve for this dirtbag? Well, one, I'm not grieving for him. Didn't know the guy, don't care. I'm not a Muslim. He doesn't mean anything to me. Number two, the Ayatollah is the equivalent of like the Pope. So let's just think about it this way. Let's say someone went into the Vatican and murdered the Pope and declared war on Catholics or the Western world or general Christianity or whatever. How do you think that would go if the Pope were assassinated? Okay, and then I want you to think, same context, how do you think people that are admittedly far more intense and radical than the Catholics are, how do you think people are going to respond to having the Muslim Pope executed? I'll wait for your response. I'll be that meme with the guy on the bench who turns into a skeleton because he's waiting for too long. What do you think they're going to do if you kill their Pope? I mean, imagine Trump supporters, if Trump were killed, assassinated, or if the White House were blown up, what do you think Americans are going to do in response to that? Because the only people that come close to the Muslims that are very militarized and radical are the Christian extremists and the Jewish Zionists. And they'll do things like kill the Muslim quote unquote Pope with really no provocation. What do you think they would do if there was complete provocation? What do you think the Muslims are going to do? Not all Muslims, but a significant portion. What do you think they're going to do now that you killed their essential Pope? And the response will tell you something very interesting because, number one, if nothing happens, then you can be assured of a couple of things. You can be assured that he's probably still alive, or they just know, well, they got bigger guns. They're going to just nuke us, and Israel runs the show, so we're just not going to do anything. Or they are going to respond, and they're going to respond in ways that are going to punish the Western world just like we've punished the Middle Eastern world and the Eastern world for decades and decades and decades and decades and decades. And I don't want to see an American city get blown up. I don't want to see people get killed. I don't want to see Americans killed. I don't want to see Israelis killed. I don't want to see Iranians killed. I don't want to see anybody killed. Unless you're a pedophile and you're convicted, or war criminal and convicted, etc. There are some circumstances where a lethal injection or a little bit of electrocution or state-sanctioned death is acceptable to me. But I think that if there is any kind of big response, it's going to go down like this. Israel is going to fucking do it. And then they're going to use that as justification if this war with Iran begins to wane, to maintain it, because they know that their time is limited in the U.S. Randy Fine of Florida, that disgusting, waddling, bloated, inflamed, religious zealot freak of nature, scumbag, subhuman sewage trash slob, Randy Fine, who calls for the murder of children because of the color of their skin and because of their religious identity when they don't even have one. That disgusting subhuman piece of garbage that looks like the demon Abraxas by the Duplancy depiction. Randy Fine has openly acknowledged that Jews in the United States are experiencing their last days. He knows that there is a movement that Jews are going to be expelled from the United States, just like they have been 109 other times, sometimes from multiple times in the same country. Randy Fine was saying that, not me. He knows. Their time's up. Look at Trump on X. Look at the videos they've posted. I went through one this morning. Virtually everything that was posted under the Trump video of declaration of war on Iran and then an update on the declaration of war on Iran. It's terrific, it's fantastic. Americans dying, it's great. We're going to do this for Israel. It's amazing. It's wonderful. It's fantastic. They got pictures of me doing something. The thing is, Trump might not have done anything with Epstein, but he's such an idiot that they would probably given him some AI generated video and been like, "You did this. I don't remember doing that. Shut up and have a Coke, Mr. President." And they give him some McDonald's and he shuts his mouth. He's like, I don't remember raping that 3-year-old girl, but they got the video of it. I must have done it. So naive, just because he's older. And, that's not even a slight because I don't really get technology. But, I guess if I was 60 or 70 and I was raised in a world without the internet, without cell phones and all that, I probably would be susceptible to the same kind of, manipulation. But anyway, the point is, if anything actually happens, I think the Israelis will do it. Like they'll bomb an American city, they'll kill Americans. Probably don't need to go to that length, but probably do it overseas, but something to that effect. But if the Muslim or Arab world decided to do something in response, I don't want to see people die, but I get it. That's such a horrible thing to say, Ryan. No, actually, I don't think it's a horrible thing to say. I think it's a real thing to say. I don't agree with it. Don't want it to happen, but I totally understand it. Totally would get it. I would completely, I would be able to process it. It'd be sad. It'd be bad for what it would further imply, but I would get it. So then we have to go and confirm these kinds of statements. They cut out, what is this statement here? They cut women's eyes out for wearing makeup. Let me look this up. Let me see if I can find any stories about this. If they're true, you better believe they're going to be in Western Jewish media. According to the American Academy of Ophthalmology, there is zero evidence that women have had their eyes cut out for wearing makeup. Great. So Tim Burchett's a piece of shit. But he's going to get us those UFOs. Sure. And Moskowitz and Luna and Loeb and Matist Agrest are all Christians and Muslims too, I'm sure, right? Let's see if we can pull this story up and I'll show it to you. Iranian protesters, let's see. Which, remember, there were a tremendous number of Mossad agents involved in all of that. Well, we pull this up from an overview from the American Academy of Ophthalmology. And I will pull this up on the screen for you now so you can see it. Zero evidence. If there was evidence, they would show you the evidence, but there's not evidence, so they can't show it to you. I'm pretty sure that you can wear makeup in Iran, but let's see. Can you read that okay? There is no evidence that Iranian authorities have a policy of cutting out women's eyes for wearing makeup. Now, however, during the 2022-2023 protests, Iranian security forces were reported to have deliberately targeted the faces, eyes, and heads of protesters, including women, which men and women, so it's like including women, anybody involved, with shotgun pellets, paintball guns, and tear gas, causing hundreds to suffer blinding injuries. Number one, there is no policy to cut people's eyes out because they wear makeup. Number two, any facial disfiguration in regard to the Iranian regime in these protests were a result of security forces shooting people with paintball guns, shotgun pellets, and tear gas. It's so horrible. Okay, but it's not unique and it's not a policy. So here's the thing. This is a great example. They cut women's eyes out for wearing makeup. There's zero evidence that women's eyes were cut out for wearing makeup. Therefore, it's unfactual. It's untrue. It's a lie. Therefore, we can look at the second part of this. Were people's faces disfigured? Yep, they were. Why? Security forces were brutal. Is that any different? Any more unique? Is it something that has never happened before? No. Look at the way that the Chinese government treated their citizens during the so-called lead up to the so-called pandemic. Dragged people out of their homes, welded people in their homes, beat people in the street, threw them in the back of vans, disappeared them. There's nothing unique about it. We didn't bomb Beijing. Nothing different about it. So it's just a total lie. And as you can imagine, I'm sure that you go the extra mile and do a little bit more research and find that all of these other accounts are also outright lies and or very misleading statements. Although there is something very interesting about this, because these things are kind of based on kind of on conservative values a little bit, right? Like you don't want your kids using X or Facebook or something too much, and there's a lot of bad stuff on there. So we might want to cut that back. In fact, the new TikTok commercial says that you can put restrictions on your kids' content, right? Because Ellison is such a great guy. And, you don't really want your daughters dressing up with a ton of makeup and short skirts, at least if you're a dad. A lot of moms promote that now. Hell, a lot of moms do porn with their daughters now. Kind of sounds like Weimar Germany, 1920s, early 1930s, before the Nazis burned the Sexual Institute of Perversity that was run by Magnus Hirschfeld, the cross-dressing sex pervert, and then a Jewish sex pervert, and then oh my God, they burned literature. No, they burned pornography. They burned smut, and I can show it to you on video, but if I show it to you in video, the video will get taken down because it's so explicit what they were actually doing at that Jewish Sex Institute in Berlin. But that's kind of a separate story. So you don't really want your girls wearing a lot of makeup and dressing like whores. So it's kind of the same concept there. And again, Christians kind of didn't like gays. So that's kind of the same thing there. So I'm not grieving for his death. I don't know if he's dead. I don't know the guy. I don't really care. And it's a very similar thing. I'll never forget this. When I was talking to a friend of mine from Saudi Arabia many, many years ago, I was walking. She was a college student, and I was walking with her to campus, and because I live right in the area, and I was talking to her, and this was back in 2016, 15, 16, maybe 15. We were talking about Syria because that was a big story in the news, and she said, I know that you know this, but what's this? Why so many Americans don't like Assad? I said, because, he's the bad guy, right? And she's like, do many Americans know that guy and his family have run Syria for like 30 years? And I said, actually, I didn't even know that. She said, yeah, they've run that country for 30 years. She's like, I'm not a fan, but they've run the country for 30 years. Americans just learned who this guy was last week. She's like, isn't that weird? Same thing with the Ayatollah. It was the same thing with Gaddafi. Same thing with, maybe not so much same thing with Saddam, but similar thing with Saddam. Like, you don't even know who these people are. Oh my God, he's dead. Woo, he's dead. You don't even know who the fuck the guy is. You know more about LeBron James than you know about the Ayatollah. You know more about Cardi B and the Stallion, or the Stallion, Megan Thee Stallion. You know more about Lil Wayne than you do about the Ayatollah. Thank you, Finn Hagen from the UK, from London. I appreciate that kind word. Thank you so much. That's one example. Here's another one. Here's Laura Loomer, who literally looks like the demon Uranome, with a picture of Al-Aqsa, saying, maybe one of Iran's missiles they are firing into Israel to murder Jews will hit this instead. The people of Israel will prevail. Every time I see her picture, I think I'm not going to be able to have any kind of sexual gratification or an erection for at least 72 hours. This person is so vile and so disgusting, like in relation to like her physical looks and in relation to the things that she says. Like while you're conspiring to undermine the United States and to destroy the US's remaining whatever's left of our reputation in the world, which isn't much, and bombing Iran. And by the way, initially targeting a fucking primary school where they've killed, the initial report was 40, the follow-up report was over 125, not all children, but most of which were children. Then they started saying, oh, that was a failed Iranian missile. Oh, that was a failed Iranian missile. Sure. Just a few weeks after the Iranians burned a statue of Baal, a deity of human sacrifice that the Jews offer children up to, Benjamin Netanyahu was pissed about it, and then suddenly we bomb a school to start off the campaign. Yeah, I don't buy it. It's called human child sacrifice. So this disgusting, vile witch, Uranum, maybe one of Israel or Iran's missiles, Freudian slip, they are firing into Israel to murder Jews will hit this instead. It's like, well, number one, aren't the missiles you're firing into Iran being fired into Iran to kill Muslims and other people? Zoroastrians, Persians, Iranians, kids, who cares? Just bomb everything. Number two, what this image is Israeli propaganda to encourage the public to accept that when the Israelis blow up Al-Aqsa and blame it on the Iranians as if the Iranians are going to target Al-Aqsa, or if they had a, quote, bomb like the Israelis do, they're going to detonate it over the freaking Holy Land. It's utterly absurd nonsense that when the Israelis finally decide to blow up Al-Aqsa so they can build the third temple and they can resurrect or they can erect the Antichrist, they will say, well, the Iranians just a stupid missile hit. It's not our problem. Why you upset us? And the Muslims say, that's it. Total war. We're killing every one of you motherfuckers. Oh my God, they're coming for the Jews again. Well, you blew up their mosque, you slaughtered their children, you murdered generations of people, and you destroyed generations of people by convincing them that the only way to live life was in quote unquote literal jihad against your aggressive, radical terrorism. You have obliterated the economic system of the United States. You have obliterated the morals of the United States and the morale of the United States. You have obliterated the social contract. You have obliterated modesty and decency and civility in the United States and all throughout the Middle East. You have taken over country by country strategically as part of a plan that was literally written down on paper back in the 90s and early 2000s. Yeah, people are going to come for you, and they're going to come for you very, very, very hard, and they're going to kill every fucking one of you without remorse, because that's what you've done to them for fucking generations, you psychotic witch. That is as true of a statement as you're going to hear anywhere in the media. That is as true of a statement as you're going to hear from anybody, because the average person is terrified, and anybody else who does speak like that actually does hold some kind of hatred for, quote, Jews, or some kind of hatred for, quote, some other group because they're bigots and they have a bias within their little religious framework. Doesn't make me special. It makes me irrelevant to 99% of conversations. This is preparation for when they do blow up Al-Aqsa. They'll blame it on somebody else, just like 9/11. Oh, the Iranians did it. The Muslims blew up their own mosque, when it was really the Israelis. Although Mistos Dokos in the chat's right, at this point, they probably just do it, admit it. They don't really care, don't really seem to have a concern for what people think anymore. Well, that's also because the propaganda is failing, and that's why they have to take us into the war now, because a generation or two later, no one's going to support Israel, and now they can't have that. Here's another one. Suddenly, the entire world knows that the U.S. military is no longer run by men in dresses, No, they're just run by not the soldiers, but the leadership. The U.S. military might not be run by men in dresses, but they are run by men in robes. It is run by, the general military is run by generals gathered in their masses like witches at black masses. They're run by pedophiles and pedophile protectors, cannibals and vampires and cannibal and vampire protectors, human and child traffickers, human trafficker and child trafficker protectors. They're run by psychopathic religious zealots. They're run by psychopaths who just want to kill. Not run by men in dresses anymore, but if it's run by people that eat children, that's okay because Christ is king. Here's another one. This is just a classic example of how the conservative mega base operates. Here's Nick Sorter last June. The amount of people trying to goad Trump into bombing Iran is seriously alarming. It's like we learned nothing from Iraq and Afghanistan. Stand strong, President Trump, not our war. It's weird because a few months later, wow, the U.S. military deployed new technologies for these strikes against Iran, which, by the way, was the same propaganda they used in Venezuela. They're suddenly sonic weapons, even though they deployed those against the Russians, that against the American embassy back in the 50s, but who cares? Including using one-way attack drones for the first. Oh my God, it's so brilliant. It's terrific. It's fantastic. These were highly successful and overwhelmed Iran's air defense systems almost immediately. Thank you, Mr. President. It's amazing how people can change their tune because they are copy and paste artists, which is even what the InfoWars account is. And here's another one. This is some random person online. I don't know who they are. And when I had made a statement on social media and said I'm not behind the war, the fallacies start. One of the fallacies was this: is that why Iranians are celebrating all over the world? And you can see what I wrote if you're watching the video, but I'd like to expand on it for audio listeners. Iranians celebrating all over the world. Well, this is like that Tim Burchett propaganda. Where are these Iranians celebrating all over the world? How many Iranians are there in the world? Most Iranians are in Iran, so they're not really celebrating all over the world. Maybe there's a couple from Iran that may be celebrating in other places in the world, but I don't kind of get the point. That's one. Number two, it's a fallacy because it doesn't really matter, even if there were Iranians. If my neighbor were Iranian over here in Japan, if they were celebrating, it doesn't really matter. It's irrelevant. Because again, if the U.S. was nuked, Washington was destroyed, half the country would be happy, half the country would be upset. It doesn't mean it's right or wrong. It doesn't matter because the point of tonight's show is you were told, like Wilson, like Roosevelt, you were told by Trump, there would not be a regime change. There would not be war at all. This is the peace president, which is why I told you over and over and over on this show for 3 years now. The peace president stuff is propaganda to lull you to sleep, to convince you that when the bombs finally do drop, they'll say, well, but it's peace. Because if he's the peace president and he wages war, then peace is war. War is peace. It's quite literally George Orwell or Eric Blair. They responded to me and said, so the women of Iran enjoyed the abuse, not getting an education, having to be subject to genital mutilation, forced at young ages to marry old men? I'm glad that this person brought up all of this information, so I have something to show you for what people are arguing. And I think that this is a very important thing, as a matter of fact, to actually address. Let's look at the claim. So the women of Iran enjoyed the abuse. What abuse? What do you mean, what abuse? It's just the abuse. It's what they do. They abuse women. Well, here's the problem. All of these statements, every justification and argument, every fallacy is based on a caricature. This is what the Muslims do. Okay? Well, if that's what the Muslims do, then please explain to me. This is a very, very, very serious question. Please explain to me how Iranian women outperform American women in science, technology, engineering, and math. Explain to me how Iranian women outpace, like American women do American men, Iranian women outpace Iranian men in college education in terms of both being registered and going to school and in terms of graduation. Explain this to me. And explain it to me like I'm a retarded person. That's just not true, Ryan. All the Iranian women are ignorant and they don't know anything because they are oppressed. Okay, well, I can pull up for you, just for the record, I can pull up a series of articles. Forbes, for example. I can even pull up the World Economic Forum, although I don't trust the World Economic Forum. I'm not sure why they would lie about this. But I could pull up a bunch of articles to show you that Iranian women perform better at STEM. They outpace American women and probably American men in a percentage. And they also outpace Iranian men. So, I mean, if one woman is enrolled and doing decent, then this idea that women aren't educated is utterly obliterated. And the fact is, there are lots and lots of women who are very successful in Iran. There are lots of women in Iran. In fact, men as well. The majority of Iranians who actually have higher IQs than Americans do. I know that might hurt the fragile egos of Americans, but it is a fact. Iranians, on average, have higher IQs than Americans. So did the Chinese and the Taiwanese and the Japanese and a bunch of other Asian groups. I mean, Iran is technically Asia. I know it's like hard to believe. And this is the problem. The problem is all of these arguments are based on one thing: assumptions and assumed beliefs, caricatures from movies and TV shows. So when somebody says actually women are going to school, I don't care about anything else. The point was, the argument that was being made is that women aren't allowed to get an education. When in fact, statistically, 70% of university graduates in science, technology, engineering, and math are women. A higher percentage than any other country. A higher percentage than any other Arab country. Iran has the highest female percentage of STEM graduates. I'm just going to paint that little bush there, that little tree there, and leave it. And you can choose to acknowledge it. You can choose to tell me I made it up. You can choose to tell me that I'm fabricating information. The point is, though, when people make those claims, they're making claims based on assumptions and caricatures. You show them evidence to the contrary, they're wrong. I can also show you, and we can look at the actual numbers, world IQ data. Now, to be fair, world IQ data, there's not a universal IQ marker per se, but generally speaking, data is accumulated across countries. Education is given a certain score, and some countries have a higher IQ, might have lower score. Some countries lower IQ might have a higher overall score. Like, for example, Japan has one of the best educational systems. Their IQ is technically a fraction of a point below Hong Kong and South Korea. Hong Kong has a slightly less, I can't really say less, but I guess statistically like a slightly less successful education system, because IQ is not based really on education. It's based on ingenuity and other factors. But let me show you this. Okay, this is I will pull this up as a share screen so that you can see it. I'll have to open up another tab here. Give me one moment to do this. Okay, World Population Review. And you can find other sources where it varies a little bit here, a little bit there. Let's pull it up so that you can see it. Here we go. Share my screen. Coming to you, average IQ by country. Let's look at the average IQ of, well, for some reason it's not popping up here. Why is that? There we go. Average IQ by country 2026. Let's look at the top country IQ scores. Hong Kong, 107.73, pretty high. South Korea, 106.97, pretty high. China, 106.48. Macau, which is a part of China, just under that. Japan, 106.30. Japan also has the most consistent high IQ score of all countries consistently. It's 106 across the board, higher than any other country. You have to scroll down to find the United States, which, by the way, the U.S. IQ actually went up statistically by like a fraction of a point. Find the United States at 101. And as a separate little issue here, you'd have to really scroll down to find Israel. They're the smartest people in the world. The Israelis are so smart. They have an IQ that is double digits. So, again, shut the fuck up. It's just utterly absurd and ridiculous, the types of arguments. It's like these really Israelis are really, really smart, really brilliant. Well, why do they have an IQ that's double digits? What is this country here under Japan and Taiwan? That would be Iran, wouldn't it? Iran has a higher IQ than Australia, Russia, Singapore, Mongolia. Singapore actually dropped quite a bit. New Zealand, Vietnam, Spain, Cyprus, Canada, the United Kingdom, Sri Lanka, Slovenia, Belarus, and the United States. So, in other words, the Iranians are smarter than the Israelis, and they're smarter than the Americans. And burning a statue of Baal, that's pretty much all you need to know. We got to kill them. As Nate in the chat said, too smart for their own good, need to be dealt with. Yep. In fact, same thing with the Japanese. It's why in the 1970s and the 1980s, where, with the exception of a few months, 2 of the 3 Fed chairs over those several decades were Jewish. In fact, 99% of those 2 decades, 70s and 80s, were run by Jews, just like virtually every other Fed chair, with few exceptions. And this is mostly Paul Volcker, conspired to undermine the Japanese economy because, quite literally, the Japanese were too good at making money and too good at being successful and too good, the same reason 100 years or 70 years prior to that, there was a movement in the U.S. to keep them out of the U.S. because the Japanese were actually able to make more money than Americans were using the same systems. And then they also didn't spend it because they lived really, really restrictive lives. And Americans, probably capitalist types, said, well, they're good at making money, but they don't spend the money. They save it. Japan is also the number 1 holder of U.S. debt. So Japan has to be dealt with. So the central banks and the Jewish Fed chairs, they undermine the Japanese economy. It's a fact. In the same way that a Jewish woman wrote part of the Japanese constitution to make sure that feminism would be welcomed in Japan. Literally, if you don't believe me, look that up. That is literally true. So back to the issue here. Iranian women outperform Iranian men, and Iranian women outperform American women and probably American men. They have, on average, a higher IQ than both Israelis and Americans. I don't care about anything else except that piece of information. Because if you're arguing the Iranian that they don't let these women have educations, okay, well then what's the IQ thing and what's the top of everything in STEM? And they try to paint Iranian women as being like these really ugly, vile, creatures, when Persian women are I think across the board generally consider some of the most beautiful women in the world, but who cares, right? Because they're not Jewish or because they're not Americans. They don't have that cigarette, alcohol, OnlyFans body type. They're not utterly repulsive as human beings, like much of the conservative Democrat political class is in the Americas, where even if they are physically attractive, they're spiritually repulsive. Yes, in the chat, I see Jean-Vier says they're gorgeous. That is true. Persian women are gorgeous on average, but they want to until this is important. I'm not just saying this to say it. It's important because there's a multifaceted thing happening here. Number one, Muslim women are always portrayed as this like really ugly and repulsive and gross. But then when they want to convince you that the Iranians are celebrating the bombing of their country, suddenly they break out the Iranian models and they're dancing around being like, look at me, I'm dancing in a free country now. Suddenly they become attractive again. And who does that? I know it's the Israelis because no other country on planet Earth, look at all the history of wartime propaganda, no other country uses sex to sell war except Israel. And I don't mean like, oh, there's a beautiful woman or a traditional woman you might want to sign up to defend your family, like traditional kind of things. Like I mean, nude or almost nude, most of the time AI generated images of women, all from Israeli bots. Again, I can't even show you some of this stuff because it would get banned from most of the streams. And it always says something to the effect of, are you really opposed to the IDF? Look at these IDF girls, as if IDF girls are Instagram models, and they probably keep a couple token ones around for photo shoots, but like they just show you tits and vag, tits and vag. That's all these fucking people think about is sex and sexual perversity. That's all they think about. They run the porn industry. They run all the smut on television. They changed all the obscenity laws in the United States from Broadway to Hollywood. And they even try to sell you war based on sex. That's why the IDF goes into the homes, the houses of women that they just slaughtered, put on their dresses, and then they hump each other. The men will put on the dresses of women they just murdered or raped and tortured, and then they'll dance around and hump each other. I can't even show you the one picture. I think there's a video of it, of a guy literally jacking off on a mountain, watching Palestinians be bombed, literally masturbating with an erection, an Israeli soldier literally stroking his fucking dick, watching people be blown apart. I get a foot fetish, okay? People have all kinds of fetishes. I read a Billion Wicked Thoughts. I think that was the name of the book. I get it. The little section of skin between the bottom of the skirt and the top of the sock. There's a Japanese word for it. I forget. I get it. But if you're physically, sexually aroused because people are having their bodies blown apart, I don't think we have a word in our language to describe what that is. Or the Israelis that march into war with rainbow flags. We're liberating people with the rainbow. You know who else used to do that? People that worship Galo and Mormo and people that worship demons in Greece and other parts of the European world. They were the aborters of children. They were the murderers of innocents. They were the tempters of men. They were the whores. They were the prostitutes. They were the abortionists. And look up who the biggest supporters of LGBTQ is. The capital of LGBTQ in Tel Aviv, the biggest supporters of abortion, liberal Jews in America. You know who the biggest opponents of all that are? Orthodox Jews. And I have zero problem with Orthodox Jews. Orthodox conservative Jews are my friends. We see eye to eye on virtually everything. Cut out the porn, cut out the wars, stop brainwashing and mutilating the genitals of children. Orthodox Jews and myself, we have a lot in common. Which brings me back to what this person said about they don't educate the women. Actually, they're more educated than you are, Sharon. I'm sure they're 10 times more beautiful, too. And they subject them to genital mutilation. Subject them to genital mutilation. It's funny, I've asked everybody I've ever met from the Middle East, and who's Muslim about genital mutilation. You know what they do? They always laugh. I know you're just asking, but like, no, that's absurd. No, they don't. I mean, there are radical sects that do that, just like there's weird Christian sects that hold snakes. If I don't get bit, then the spirit's in me. And if I get bit, I must have been worshiping the devil. And they speak in tongues and they're fucking psychotic. And yeah, there's weird Christian sects that do shit like that. But no, they don't generally practice genital mutilation. Actually, the only genital mutilation that Muslims consistently practice is called circumcision, which is a very old practice. And circumcision is part of a covenant with a tribal god. 80% of American males are circumcised. 62% of the country is Christian. The remaining percentage of Americans are a mixture of Indian and Buddhist, which is one of the biggest religions, which means that there's a significant portion of Americans who are circumcised, not because of religion, but because that's just the policy of the hospitals. Circumcision is well documented to cause psychological and physical damage to the body, but you'll get dirty. Well, again, it's kind of the thing with like resources. If we just stop getting resources, we stop looking for new resources and extracting new resources, and we don't go back to old places and extract more with new technology, and we don't recycle things and make things more efficient, then yeah, we would run out if we keep doing exactly what we're doing. But we're not going to keep doing continue doing what we've been doing, because we're going to adapt and change things. And now we have more resources than we've ever had, and we have more people than we've ever had officially. So I don't really get the big issue here. It's kind of the same thing with the circumcision issue. Well, I mean, if you don't wash your junk, then yeah, it's probably going to get dirty. But listen, 80% of Americans are circumcised. I could tell you, I had a lot of roommates over the years, and I was never a guy who like gets undressed in the locker room in front of other guys. When I played sports, I just go home and take a shower. I didn't take a shower. I didn't get naked in front of other people. I just had I don't care who they are. Even if it was women, it's like even girls I've dated in the past. Like, I don't necessarily want to be naked in front of people all the time. Okay. So I'm not a rabbi. So I don't like that. I don't like that idea. But I can tell you this, I don't have to see someone naked to know that they're dirty. And I've had a lot of roommates. All they did was smoke weed, eat garbage, drink beer, and smell like literal garbage. And I'm pretty sure by statistics, they were circumcised. In other words, you can be circumcised and still be a filthy pig, or you can be uncircumcised and be clean, and it's the same issue. So that means that circumcision is nothing more than an old cult ritual, and the Muslims practice it. Yes, they do, but that's not what this person's referring to. They're referring to genital mutilation. So I'm a little bit confused. Because, I mean, even if you were to argue, okay, look, okay, they practice genital mutilation. They cut the clitoris off. I did learn what a clitoris was from an Eminem song. I expect them not to know what a woman's clitoris is. Of course, they're going to know what intercourse is by the time they get fourth grade. They got the Discovery Channel, don't they? Stuck in my head. All those years of listening to Eminem. In a sense, that's kind of educational, right? But the Medzitsa Vephe, I'm not sure how to pronounce it. I don't speak the language. By the way, Jesus only spoke a little bit of it. He spoke Aramaic. Direct oral suctioning. This is when they cut the baby's penis and then they suck the blood out of it. I mean, again, at the very base minimum, whether it's weapons of mass destruction or it's terrorism, we're kind of at a stalemate here. Oh, they generate the mutilations of children. They cut the clitorises off. Okay, let's just say that they did that. It's not a policy. It's not like something that's prescribed. And all the Muslim women I've ever known, I've known a lot, they've never had their clitoris removed. Maybe they were lying to me, right? At the very least, just it's on par. And here is the oral suctioning ritual of which I'm told doesn't exist. This is an anti-Semitic conspiracy. Well, here's the New York City Department of Health website explaining how to suck the penis and how to suck the blood out properly so there's not an infection. Pause the show and read it, or go to the website, New York City Department of Health, and read that yourself. Speaking of circumcision, I genuinely would not be surprised if you hear more in the news coming up soon about Belgium. Why? Funny thing is, Belgian authorities are investigating circumcision in Belgium. Oh boy, not a good idea. Why are they investigating circumcision? Because some of the cases involve babies getting very severe infections because some dirty, probably a pervert, is sticking their mouth on a baby's genitals after they've been cut. And the U.S. ambassador is claiming that this is anti-Semitic. And Belgium authorities have said, well, that's just disinformation. What we're doing is we're investigating a specific case where children got, or a child got, sick and an infection because of some dirty, unhygienic practices. And this is the key to the whole thing. You know what the United States and the Israelis said in response to that? If we can't practice circumcision, Judaism will essentially disappear in Belgium. That's telling. Because instead of arguing, oh, well, I mean, it's not really, okay, one person did something unhygienic. Not all of these moles do things that are unhygienic. I understand you're looking at one guy. I get it. No. They just said, well, I mean, yeah, dirty circumcision, infection, blood ritual, that's all okay. And if you don't want us to cut the penises of infants and you don't want us to suck the blood out of them, then you're saying we can't be Jews? Well, if that's how you're defining it, yeah, you can't cut little children's penises and suck the blood out of it, you fucking vampires. You can't do that, you blood-sucking thieves, you blood-sucking parasites. Those kind of caricatures come to mind a little bit. Is that offensive when I say those things? Well, where do you think those ideas came from? You have an alien group of people, just like anybody's alien. I'm alien here in Japan, but you got an alien group of people. And you learn one day, because maybe somebody walks by and they see the ritual performed. They're not supposed to, but they see it. They go back, they tell the people in their little town, they say, I saw something really bizarre today. You know those religious the Jewish groups that live, on the other side of town or live over the mountain there? I walked by them, like one of their little facilities, and I happened to look in the window, and they were cutting the penis of a child, like a little infant. It was crying, and they cut there's blood everywhere, and one of their holy men was sucking the blood out. Game of telephone at the very least. How do you think that story is going to be told? Well, we saw these rabbis and they were sucking the blood out of an infant. That's blood libel. Again, shut the fuck up. I don't care what you call it. It's a fact. It's part of the ritual. That's where the idea of bloodsuckers come from. That's where the idea of parasites come from. That's where the idea of blood libel originated. I'm not saying I even necessarily disagree with it. I'm just objectively stating that witnessing that act or learning about that act is the reason why people say those things, which was the inspiration for my book, Prodigals of Goyim. I wrote this last year into this year. It took me 3 months to write it, 3 months to edit it. And this was the question that I asked. This was what inspired the whole 800-page book. I said, this tome was initially compiled to answer 3 complex and controversial questions. What are the stereotypical caricatures of the Jewish people? How did they originate? And what do they mean? That's it. I just want to know where they come from. And that, what I just explained, is where they come from. So if this issue gets any bigger, I wouldn't be surprised if Belgium ends up in the crosshairs and ends up a much bigger story than it is right now. Can't do that. Now, since we are into hour number 3 already, this is The Secret Teachings, tstradio.info, rdgable@yahoo.com. I want to thank all of you for joining us on relative short notice. This is our Monday show. It's actually Monday here in Japan, but this is our Monday show, but live Sunday night. I've let some of the dust settle, and I'm presenting to you my viewpoint on a lot of this stuff, and we're taking our time going through it. We won't go more than 3 hours tonight, so I need to get through the rest of this stuff. I think we got plenty of time, but we need to get through the rest of this stuff as efficiently as possible. So please, I'm just letting you know that if you're watching this, the show is really an audio show. This is just a special thing I do a couple of times a month. And if you would like to support the show, the free archive where you hear ads, I don't have those advertisements placed in there myself. I don't have sponsors, but if you hear those ads, they support the show. If you don't like them, who does? Sign up to tstradio.info, get access to the full show archive, all of our shows cataloged, and you will be supporting independent radio. You can also get a copy of this new book, Protocols of Goyim, A Kosher Conspiracy. It's a big book. You get a copy of that. I'll do it into the mic. You hear it. It's a big book. I mean, this book is like 4 inches thick. It's huge. Get a copy of the book. Support the show, physical or digital. Alrighty, so let's go and finish off the show with a big bang tonight. Let's look at what CNN had initially reported on the 25th of February in the lead up to the attack on Iran. Here's what they said. As the U.S. moves firepower into the Persian Gulf, these things are happening. People are guessing what Donald Trump is thinking. They wait till the State of the Union is over. Trump offered his highest profile explanation of why he's amassing U.S. military assets around Iran, saying his goal is to ensure the country not obtain a nuclear weapon. He said, they want to make a deal, but we haven't heard the secret words, we will never have a nuclear weapon. Trump said during a relatively short section of his speech on Iran. He said again, his preference was to pursue diplomacy. When they speak about peace, pretty sure there's a Bible verse on that. They mean war. But CNN correctly reported Iran, in fact, has stated clearly it is not pursuing a nuclear bomb. I don't have to try to get myself to trust CNN. I know that's true because I did a show on it last year and the year before that, 3 years before that, I did an Iran show. Last year, I did an Iran show. We talked about this. They've allowed inspections. They were actually going to allow additional inspections based on these recent negotiations. And then the U.S. attacked again. Here's Politico. This was the same day as CNN reported on the 25th of February. White House officials believe the politics are a lot better if Israel strikes first. This is what they're debating. And they were debating this while they were negotiating. So it wasn't about negotiations. That was just an illusion, a red herring, a MacGuffin, while they decided who to bomb, where to bomb, how many to bomb, and how long this is going to last. It's really, really evil. I should pause before I go any further and go back to the chat here because I know we have a lot of listeners that have doubled the audience probably on stream since we started the show tonight. Zach is here. Hello, Zach. Let me scroll back through this. I'm only going to go through a little bit of this for time's sake, but Nathaniel Dove, thank you for joining us on the show tonight. Rover, thank you for joining us on the show tonight. Said this happened in Brooklyn about 25 years ago. A bunch of babies were infected by the rabbi. Cedar Brick is also here. Hello, Cedar. Howdy. And Dove said, you need to write thicker books, Ryan. Yeah, I know. It was supposed to be a 60-page essay, and it turned into an encyclopedia. Friend Coy said, I love thick books that are interesting. Well, then you are going to love this book. Thank you, Mac Thomas, for suggesting people should get the book. There is a digital copy, but you get one with the physical. Let's see who else we have in the chat here. Finn Hagen, who I mentioned earlier, said, I think they're from Asia, transmigrated across Europe. They're a form of gypsy that converted to Judaism in the 13th. Yeah, I've read that book too. Not the point of tonight's show, but that is another show, and that is addressed in my Articles of Goyim book. Cedar Brick also said, I tried to super chat, but you don't have a tip option. No, I don't. You don't have a tip option. So you have to go to Cash App or buy me a coffee, or you'd have to, honestly, rather than tipping, you might as well just buy a book. Or, I mean, if you're going to donate something, donate to Cash App. It's direct, it's easy, and it works internationally. I do not use that function, Flux. Thank you for pointing that out. Plus, YouTube takes a percentage of it, and if you're taking money, then your show's even more restricted. Last couple of people in here. Clay Davis also joined us. Hello, Clay. WAPP Kid. There's so much hate on X. It's disgusting. I had the same conversation with my wife this morning. Yeah, it's utterly repulsive. It's vile. Evan Kelly is also here. Just received my book. Looking forward to reading it. Well, Evan, I appreciate you getting the book, and I hope that you enjoy it. And thank you again for the compliment, Mac Thomas. All right, let's go back to Politico. While the U.S. was negotiating, they were debating on how we should position the optics when we actually attack, which means that they had no intention of actually doing things through diplomatic channels. This was a lie that the president told. Another one. And because I can't recall the exact headline, I'm going to pull up my Protocols of Goyim book, and I'm going to take a screenshot of the article that's actually in the book. I'm going to show you the exact same lie from last year. The exact same lie where the U.S. said, we're negotiating. Boom, we bomb Iran. Based on a lie. The U.S. colluded with the Israelis in order to bomb Iran in 2025 using diplomacy as a cover, and they just did the same thing in 2026. I don't care what the Ayatollah was doing. I'm concerned with the state of mental health in the United States of America, which is not very good. This is a screenshot from my book. Here is Wall Street Journal 2025 in twist. U.S. diplomacy. I'll remove the comments there on the video so you can actually see it. U.S. diplomacy served as cover for Israeli surprise attack. Well, son of a bitch, they lied about diplomacy in 2025, and they just lied about diplomacy again to bomb Iran. It's funny how that works. And here is the cherry on top. Here is The Guardian and many others reporting on the 23rd of February. Trump-Iran airstrikes decision to be guided by Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff. Now, so we're clear, Steve Witkoff is the witless worm who is negotiating with Ukrainians to keep that war going for the Jewish coke addict Zelensky, who is literally a gay actor, like literally was an actor, like Trump and Ronald Reagan, and maybe Obama too, but literally an actor who has a coke problem and likes dancing naked and is Jewish and said he's going to turn Ukraine into another Israel. Don't believe me? Okay, type in Atlantic Council, Big Israel, Ukraine. You can pull it up for yourself. That's what Witkoff is doing. Jared Kushner is the guy who had so much power in the first Trump administration that people of the administration decided to quit because they'd be having a conversation. Trump would be saying things like, this is terrific, fantastic, incredible. And then Kushner would walk in and they'd all turn to him and let him take over the conversation. Like, I want you to think about that. Whether you like Trump or not, Trump is a guy who's very, very self-centered in a lot of ways. Just naturally, you get that from leaders like this or misleaders like this. Look at what Trump did to the guy when he went to the factory And this guy screams out, "You protect pedophiles." And Trump just gave him the middle finger and said, "F you." On the other hand, when Jared Kushner comes into the White House, it's a little bit different. When Jared Kushner comes into the White House, they stop and they let Jared Kushner take over the conversation. This is confirmed by inside White House officials who were directly involved, not people that are like leaking information. One of them wrote a book about it that said Jared Kushner just had this disproportionate control in the first Trump administration. If I recall correctly, I'm pretty sure Trump himself even said, like, yeah, Kushner had too much control. Why did you let him then? You're the president. You're the guy who was famous for saying, "You're fired." You can't fire Jared Kushner? You can't get rid of Jared. You can't tell him to shut his mouth? I'm talking. Jared Kushner just gets to do whatever he wants? Who is this guy? Turns out he's the architect of the destruction of Gaza and the reconstruction of Gaza, where he's going to make a nice penny, a big shekel, on the bones of hundreds of thousands of people, which, by the way, if we should kill the Ayatollah because he killed 100,000 people, which there's no evidence or basis to that whatsoever, and a lot of the protests were led by the Mossad. But let's just say he killed 100,000. Well, the Israelis have killed far more than that. And we're not going to glass them. We're not going to ice them. So I'm kind of confused about the double standard here. Kushner is a worm. Kushner is a weasel. Kushner is a disgusting, I don't want to say human being because I'm not sure if he is. You look at him, and he's got that look of like an Ellie weasel. You know he's lying. You don't need evidence over the years to prove that he's lying, but you know that he's lying. And how do you know that he's lying? He's speaking. Jared Kushner is such a disgusting worm that even though he's not physically like repulsive in the way that Laura Loomer is, he makes me want to throw up for a different reason. He is so gross. And yes, I'm really, really, really choosing my words quite deliberately. Here is Business Insider, ex-Trump aide Stephanie Grissom says Jared Kushner had absolutely no shame exerting his power in the White House. Kushner considered himself the real chief of staff. What he did was against protocol and irresponsible, yet the president let him do it. Why? That's the guy negotiating, quote, peace, the guy who wants to murder people who aren't Jewish, who wants to take land because God gave it to him. I doubt Kushner's even a Jew, as if that matters at all, and then build resorts on top of the bones. And this is the guy who is negotiating with the Iranians. If I was maybe they're not that smart in Iran, because if I was Iran, I would have said, I am not shaking the hand of Witkoff or Kushner. You get me two unbiased negotiators, people that are not Jewish or don't claim to be Jewish, people that have no connection to Israel. I want negotiators that are middle of the road. I want negotiators who have no religious bias. Then we'll talk. I'm not talking to a Jewish supremacist bigot who wants to slaughter my people, and he's supposed to be the unbiased negotiator in this discussion. Don't think so. So shame on the Iranians for not saying that outright. Let's move on. I already showed you this. They bombed a school and killed children, then claimed that was an Iranian missile. Well, actually, you know, the Iranian missiles are quite sophisticated. You should know. You probably sold them to them. What's that line in The Joker? He's like, and the suit wasn't cheap. You ought to know you bought it, you know, because we sell weapons to the Israelis, or we give them to the Israelis at a super big discount because, like circumcision, you know, Jewish women don't touch anything unless it's half off. So we don't give them things at full price, or we just give them to them, you know, completely without any cost whatsoever. We subsidize, the taxpayer pays for it. And then they give it to the Chinese, and the Chinese give it to the Iranians. And if you don't believe me, you can read everything from the Council on Foreign Relations to mainstream news articles where they openly state, where it's well known internationally, that Iran gets their weapons from the Chinese who get them from the Israelis, who get them from the Americans, the same way that most of those weapons south of the border that are killing Americans and Mexicans and everybody else are also sold to the Israelis or given to the Israelis, because Israel is one of the primary financiers, trainee groups through the Mossad or IDF, and armors of the drug cartel south of the border. It is a fact. It's a fact. They train them, they arm them, they finance them. It's well known. That's why El Chapo's wife wore a Star of David when she went to court. Don't kill me. I'm on the team. You ought to know. You bought it. That's why we know they have really good weapons. And the Iranians have such good weapons that you got to really think they are kind of crazy, because, frankly, if I were Iran and I knew that I was going to get bombed either way, and I knew that the Israelis want to kill everybody here, civilians, everybody, because the non-Jew is the enemy. They want to do this to Americans. They definitely want to do it to the Iranians. I would have already leveled Tel Aviv, just objectively. It's not like I want to see that. I hope that happens. Just like if I was Iran, I would have already launched every one of my hypersonic missiles, and I would have turned that place into a geological dig site 100 years from now that's going to have to be looked at and debated on whether or not nuclear weapons were used. But see, the Iranians won't and kind of can't do that, because Israel is like the holy land of the Muslim people too. That's why they won't. That's really the only thing holding them back. They're not going to blow up Al-Aqsa. They're not going to drop a nuke and blow up the Holy Land. It's insane. But like objectively, militarily, if I was put into this position, I'd have no choice but to do that. It's like a movie line. You're giving me no choice. I don't want to do this, but I have to. I don't have a choice. You put me into this position. You don't have to like me. You don't have to love me, but you will fucking respect me. That's how the Iranians need to behave. But they might be too intellectual, because anytime you see any Iranians on TV, you see any of these like Iranian professors, they're really, really articulate, and they're just like, I don't understand why they keep lying to us. They keep lying to us. I don't really get it. I don't know. I don't know. So, killing children because we blew up a statue of Baal, or the Iranians blew up a statue of Baal, lit it on fire. So, well, this is where it gets really interesting, though. CNN reported this, and this I had to take a screenshot of, because I feel like this is going to be eliminated from the internet at some point. So I had to take a screenshot of it. I want you to see this. I want you to see this crystal clear on your screen, and I will read it to you as well. And to answer your question, Dove, in the chat, no, I don't think Jared Kushner is the Antichrist. I don't believe the Antichrist is a person per se. I mean, it could be in terms of how they portray it, but I think it's a spirit that possesses people, if you will, figuratively a spirit, or a spirit of wickedness, something to that effect. Let me read this to you, okay? This is going to bring the show around full circle. This is not me saying this. This is Tal Shalev, I'm guessing Jewish, I'd assume, because they very clearly know what they're talking about, writing this for CNN. I'm going to paint the picture. It's a CNN update. Timing of U.S.-Israel attack. Well, I got to take a deep breath here, because it's a little bit exciting, if I'm being honest with you. It's a little bit exciting because it confirms that I'm not insane. Timing of U.S.-Israel attack on Iran bears symbolic meaning in Judaism. The timing of the U.S. and Israeli attack on Iran bears symbolic meaning in Judaism. Ahead of the upcoming Jewish holiday of Purim, worshippers read the specific portion from the Old Testament known as Zachor. The passage from the book of Deuteronomy commands the ancient Israelites to remember an unprovoked attack by the nation of Amalek, and to eradicate the memory of Amalek once the Israelites are settled in their land. The passage is read publicly before Purim to fulfill the mitzvah of remembering Amalek as Israel's archetypical enemy. Oh boy. If you didn't get a cold chill from that, if it doesn't all finally resonate with you, you are not paying attention. What this article is saying is that what this attack on Iran really is part of a religious ritual linked to Deuteronomy and the ritual holy day of Purim, and of course the archetypical enemy Amalek. It's linked to the Persians. It's linked to the Book of Esther, which is where Purim comes from. And this is where things get really, really, really interesting. Here's National Geographic. Pause the show and read this, or just type in, don't even have to type in National Geographic, just type in 6 planetary alignment. Despite the dramatic name, these alignments aren't exceptionally rare. The last 6 planet parade occurred in January of 2025, a 4 planetary alignment in August of 2025, etc. It goes on to explain that February 28th, not the only day, but it was the primary day, you could see this planetary parade of Mercury, Venus, Jupiter, Saturn, Neptune, and Uranus. Those 6 planets geometrically correspond to what? The hexagram. And although you could see them with the telescope on other days, the moment the definitive, like encyclopedic, scientific, cosmic definition of that alignment took place on February 28th, when we decided to bomb Iran, forming an arc in the sky, big arc, each point corresponding to one of the points of the hexagram. I'm sure that's just a coincidence. And before I take down this set of images here, I wanted to show you one other thing before we go into the details of Purim. This is an email from Jeffrey Epstein to Ehud Barak, who also talked about the importance of using Peter Thiel and his ideas because he loves the Antichrist so much. Here is an Epstein email. This is EFTA 00873-126, if you want to confirm in the DOJ archive, DOJ Library of Epstein.gov. Here is Jeffrey Epstein saying, hopefully, someone suggests getting authorization now for Iran. The Congress would do it. No period, no punctuation, doesn't spell the word would correctly. These are inbred retarded Satanists or whatever you want to call them. But anyway, you get the gist of what he's saying, even though he apparently is illiterate. Jeffrey Epstein wrote that to one of the Israeli leaders, and that was back in 2013. It's funny because in 2013, they were saying we should get authorization from the U.S. Congress for Iran. In other words, Jewish billionaires and Israeli leaders talking in private about how they can get the U.S. Congress to justify, to vote for a war with Iran. And how are they going to do that? Well, through the blackmail operation that they were running. But we never even needed to get to that point, because now we'll just do it with no congressional approval whatsoever, just like we did Iraq. Iraq was just an hors d'oeuvre. Do you understand? They are openly planning to neuter Iran. And boy, oh boy, that's where we are. But Ryan, aren't you happy that the supreme leader's dead? Aren't you happy that this evil, wicked person is finally just gone? Well, no, because I don't think I've ever woke up in the last, my entire life and thought, I really hope we kill this evil psychopath running. It never really crossed my mind. I don't really care. Doesn't really matter to me. It's irrelevant. But suddenly everybody's very concerned, just like they were with, Ahmadinejad. But they never got him, although they never got him in the early days of my radio career. They got him just now, reportedly. They killed the former Iranian leader. Reportedly. I don't know if I believe that any more than they killed the supreme leader. The Iranians might just said, yeah, they killed him. He's probably in hiding. Maybe they did kill him. I don't know. Either way, I want to show you one important little thing here so you don't forget. Here is, if it loads, it loaded. Catholic websites, many others pointed this out. Remember, and I wasn't an advocate for this, but remember back in, what year was that, when the Paris Olympics happened and we talked about ISIS and the Thames River and all that, the ritual aspects of it. And people were saying that it was a satanic ritual, and they're like, no, it's a celebration of Bacchus. And I said, actually, it is a celebration of Bacchus. But it's like, well, they used Last Supper imagery. It's like, well, yeah, but, Madonna, see, when Madonna did the Last Supper thing, that was defamatory and sacrilege. When they did it at the Olympics, it really wasn't, because Bacchus, as a wine god, he's kind of a god of celebration and feasting. And I'm not sorry to say this, the Last Supper is not a Christian concept. The Last Supper is the last supper that you eat, after the harvest, before the winter months. And that's the last, and you give thanks to the bounty of nature, and you would drink a lot of wine. So Bacchus was at the center of that. But the fact that Thomas Jolly, who is Jewish, organized it, and the fact that Barbara Butch, who's like a Jewish, like in her own words, she's a Jewish lesbian fat slob or something. She's proud of that, being like a fat lesbian Jew slob. It's like her own, that's not mine. That's her own words. It's actually in my book. Like, she calls herself like whatever it is. I don't know. But she's the one that played Jesus. I was like, I can't help but think they mocked Jesus intentionally. Well, the only person that stood up for Jesus wasn't Trump. Wasn't any Republican or Democrat. You know who stood up for Jesus? Muslim leaders. You know who stood up for Jesus? Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. And the Israelis and the Americans, the Jews and the Christians, the psychopaths that won a holy war, just killed the only man who actually stood up and said, I don't think you should mock Christ like that. We respect him, and we're very offended, just like a lot of Christians are offended. And in fact, in some Arab nations, in some Muslim countries, they actually put up billboards in Arabic with the Last Supper saying this. Tel Aviv didn't put those billboards up. Muslims put those billboards up. And I've shared this with some people, and the response I've gotten is like, wow, I had no idea. The other side says, but they don't believe Jesus is the Son of God, so who cares? He's dead. I'm glad he's dead. Well, again, see, the Jews they also don't believe he's the Son of God. In fact, I'm pretty sure there was a guy named Pontius Pilate who washed his hands and said, look, the Romans have nothing to do with this. If you want to kill him, kill him. And they said, yes, his blood will be on our children, to quote the Bible. But I guess that doesn't matter, because there's some verse in Genesis or something that says I'm supposed to give up all my land and resources and all the things I own to some people in Israel. I think that's Genesis 5. Maybe I'm misremembering what I read in Genesis, but I think that's what it was. Are you staying with me? Keeping up with what I'm saying? Now let's turn our attention to the two things. Let's turn our attention to, I want to play some clips, and I want to show you an image here, and I want to talk about Purim and the apocalypse with you. First thing I want to do is I'm going to show you this interesting website that Americans used to go to. It is called the usdebtclock.org. And you can see the debt just skyrocketing. Without Iran, we'd hit 40 trillion in a couple of years. With Iran, we'll probably hit it sooner. But I thought it was interesting that there's a pop-up now on the usdebtclock.org website. You know what that pop-up is? That pop-up is an image that gives you a free book, an ebook. And can anybody in the chat tonight who are watching live, can anybody see what that image says? Talk about conspiracies. Oh boy. I'll wait. All right. It says New World Ascending. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but just a couple of years ago, if the Biden administration would have put something on, a website that said like New World Ascending, Infowars, everybody would have been all over it. And yes, friend Koi not in the chat, the free book link does look like a fish. It's very popple, the holy sea with the fish hat and the fish ring. Oanus. It says New World Ascending, like everybody would be freaking out. It's a New World Order. But if you put New World Ascending on the debt clock as the clock is ticking toward 40 trillion, 40 trillion, I have reasonable numbers stuck in my head, not 40 trillion. I can't conceive of that. I can't even conceive of $1 million. But 40 trillion, whew, that's with a T, 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 T. Yes, Nate in the chat is another Roman omen. Look at that image and tell me that if that was Obama, if that was Biden, wouldn't you be freaking out? You wouldn't be defending the police state and the ongoing endless wars of occupation, etc. But if you see this image, it's okay because Trump did it, and we're ascending to the new world, the golden age of America, which is really a technocratic monarchy controlled by Curtis Yarvin, who is a black elf magician of the Kabbalistic sort. In his own words, not my words. He calls himself a dark elf, quote unquote dark elf. So what do you get out of that? A new world ascending. Oh, we're going to get a new world. I'm not just showing you this because in the chat, yes, the debt is also ascending. Unlike David Wilcock, the U.S. debt ascended. Maybe he could pull that into his mythology and fake stories and fake prophecies. But that is the only thing ascending is the U.S. debt. And I'm not just showing it to you to show it to you. There's a reason I'm showing this to you in relationship to the Purim story. Okay, I want to just show you. Type in Purim. Well, we'll go to like a Google search. I only trust Jewish search engines. Let's type in Purim. Purim, celebrated between March 2nd and March 3rd. And I'm uncertain if the dates change. They may change. I suppose it depends on the calendar. You'll notice that if you type that in, you get associations with Passover, Hanukkah, and Sukkot. And you'll get a description. I mean, it says Wikipedia. I don't trust Wikipedia, but you go to like Jewish websites, Jewish Learning. Purim is JewishLearning.com, Purim 101. Purim is a joyous holiday that celebrates the saving of the Jews from a threatened massacre in ancient Persia. That would be Iran. That would be the Iranian people. And in the chat, I don't know what a dark elf is. Whatever Curtis Yarvin is snorting or injecting or whatever demons he's talking to, I don't know. A lot of it's Lord of the Rings, stuff with Lord of the Rings. But it's interesting because you type in Purim, this is what you get. I didn't do this. I mean, I typed in Purim, but I didn't do this. The pictures you get are like Israelis dressed in rainbows and tutus and dancing around. That's apparent. I didn't know that, but that's apparently how they celebrate Purim. Just a bunch of gay Jews dancing in tutus. I mean, really, you understand why the Germans burned the Institute of Sexual Science. I'm trying to figure out why the conservative Christians aren't completely rebelling against this. They've been somehow duped into backing it and supporting it. But I didn't even have to look for it. It's got a bunch of gay guys that pop up in rainbow dresses and shirts and tutus. I mean, this guy just is totally, look at this, it's totally disgusting. You hate them because they're Jews. Like, are you a fucking retarded person? I don't hate them because they're Jews. I don't hate them because they're gay. I don't hate them at all. What I'm confused about is how Christian America can support this and then mock Muslims for so-called anti-gay actions like throwing gays off of buildings. I'm confused. You also don't like gays. The Jews killed your Savior. And your Savior, he wasn't a Jew per se. He rejected the Pharisee. He rejected the leadership of the Jews. And by the way, he also rejected the notion that he was the true physical incarnate Son of God. But don't try convincing Christians of that because they'll just call you a Satanist, even though it's all part of the same lesser and greater mysteries of Greece and Persia. And the Greek mysteries are 1,400 years before Christ. This is a whole other subject we don't have time to get into tonight. But the point is, the first thing that pops up with Purim is a bunch of gay Jews dancing in tutus. So it's pretty incredible. That's Purim. Now let's look this up. Where does Purim? Well, I guess we go back to the Google search engine here. I only trust Sergey Brin to bring me the truth. Where does the Purim story come from? So we'll go back to this and we'll highlight the Jewish Learning website. And then let's go. Where does the story of Purim comes from? It comes from the Book of Esther. And you can pull this up. Let's say here's history.com, historychannel.com. Okay. Purim is a joyous holiday commemorating the salvation of the Jewish people from a near massacre in ancient Persia, as recounted in the Book of Esther. Okay. So now we have a basic idea of what we're dealing with here. Basic idea of what Purim is. Now, what I want to do is I want to show you my new book. Not because I'm necessarily trying to sell it to you. I am. No secret about that. But the reason I'm showing it to you, and for those of you just listening and can't show it to you, I'm just going to read to you from the book. But I want to show you this because you can see it like written down, and you can pause and you can independently verify all of this yourself. And also, if you want to take a screenshot of it, it's, I guess, it's a free sample of the book. But I really, 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 really want to drive this point home and show you what I think this is all about. And I don't take pleasure in this at all. I'm going to show you this, and we're going to go back to the chat, and we're going to wrap up the show. Okay, this is from my new book. This is a section titled Ritual War and the Samson Option. And that is the digital version you see on the screen there. I have the physical version here in front of me. Even though there are page numbers, the book is so massive. If I can find it as easily. See page 241. It's such a gigantic book. Oh, actually, I should probably mention this on top of showing you this image. You can see also in the book these PNAC strategies and the clean break strategy. Here, let's look at some of these really, really fast. Here is the clean break strategy. Yeah, here is what they say. This is the Jewish people that wrote. They were Jews. The people that wrote the PNAC document were Jews. Clean break strategy was written primarily by Jews. This is the neocon policy and how they're going to distribute information. This is what they said that they would do. This is not based on anything factual. This is based on caricatures. They called the defense cabal. This would be the defense secretary, all the Paul Wolfowitzes and Richard Pearl and Elliot all the Jews, Elliot Abrams, Douglas Feith, and David Wurmser. The messages that the defense cabal would give out. This is the neocon policy paper. Aid for Israel, joint weapons developments, preemption, remaking the Middle East, new homeland security business opportunities. Got to make money off of it. Legitimization of Israeli occupation of Palestinian territories. That was back in 2003. The neocon specialty press. All the Jews in the press. Brooks, Kaplan, Crystal, etc. And what would they do in the press? They would convince you of the dangers of Islam. The illegitimacy of all Arab governments. The illegitimacy of land for peace initiatives. And the primacy of the defense of Israel. The columnists. These are the Jewish columnists, Kagan, Boot, Sapphire. I'd assume they're also Jewish. I'm not sure about Sapphire and Boot. I'd assume they are. Palestinian militants as terrorists. Palestinians are terrorists. Linkage between 9/11 and all Arab governments. Not just Saudi Arabia. All Arabs were involved in 9/11. Critics of Israel as anti-Semites. That is in the neocon policy paper. So the next time somebody tries to convince you of how Israel needs to defend itself and Islam's a danger and how Israel's the prime central government of the world and Palestinians are terrorists and Arabs did 9/11 and if you don't agree, you're an anti-Semite, fuck yourself to hell and back. It's a policy paper talking point written by Jews and conservative Christian Zionist bigots. And it goes on. They get into the explicits of it, including pushing legislation in order to control the conversation. That's the clean break strategy. All right, let's go to the Samson option. I'm going to read this to you directly from the book. Here we go. The 2025 U.S.-Israeli attack on Iran came under the same pretext of WMDs in Iraq, something said about Iran since the 1980s. It occurred on Friday, June 13th, 2025 at approximately 3:30 a.m. local time in Tehran. This is interesting because of the lore around Friday the 13th and the timing known as the witching hour, when the veil between worlds gets thinner, the transition between dark and light. Further, there are 613 mitzvot, or commandments, for the Jews. The attack also occurred while Mars, the god of war, was in Leo the lion, and so it is not coincidental that the Israelis called their plan Operation Rising Lion, in reference also to the Lion of Judah. When the United States decided to join in on the action, a few days later, they chose to do so under a waning moon, the domain of Hecate, the goddess of crossroads and magic. The date selection was June 22nd, which is part of the traditional 3-day festival for the summer solstice, the Rising Lion. But what about all of the other wars? October 7th, 2001, Jewish holiday of Sukkot, and the day the Bush administration initiated operations in Afghanistan. March 20th, 2003, was the Jewish holiday of Purim, and the day Operation Iraqi Freedom began. Iraq was just an hors d'oeuvre. Do you understand? They're planning to neuter Iran, and literally they attacked Iraq on the same lead up to, and it's the same story. It's a Jewish religious ritual. October 20th, 2011 was the Jewish holiday of Shemini Atzeret, and the day Libya was officially overthrown with the death of Muammar Gaddafi. September 22nd, 2014 was the day of Rosh Hashanah, and also the day that the U.S. officially intervened in Syria against ISIS with Operation Inherent Resolve. ISIS is also the Israeli Secret Intelligence Services. October 7th, 2023, the date when Israel allowed Hamas to attack them. This is all well documented now, giving rise to the current onslaught of Palestinians from that date onward. It was also a celebration of Shemini Atzeret and a transition of Saturn returns through Pisces. Saturn is, of course, the planetary spirit that is represented with the star on the flag of that state. And all of this aligns with the Jewish tradition of blood sacrifice on holy days from Passover and Yom Kippur to Sukkot, Shavuot, and so on. It's an act of ritual magic, such as the wording behind the Purim ritual: shock and awe. That's mesmerism in magical terms, which is my background. And then I read these things in political terms. I'm like, well, that's occult stuff. That's what is that doing in political conversations? Okay, let's fast forward. Within a month of this book being published, the United States and Israel had once more conspired to bomb Iran. Unlike the 2025 attack launched to officially cripple Iran's nuclear technology capabilities, and which may have been a public stress test, the February 28, 2026 bombing was both unspecific and intended to create conditions for regime change. In President Trump's video declaration that major combat operations in Iraq had begun, a Freudian slip, Iran had begun, he tells the Iranian people to institute the regime change. When we are finished, take over your government, it will be yours, quote unquote. This is clever propaganda, equivalent to Trump supporters arguing it's not a war, it's a strategic operation, because such optics take the weight of a regime change war out of the debate. We didn't do it, the Iranian people did it. We just bombed them into oblivion. The same is true for initially calling the 2026 bombing preemptive. And then guess what they did after they called it preemptive? They said, also 4 weeks, 2 weeks to curb the spread. The official narrative of the 2026 attack spun the same stale story about WMDs and terrorism, with social media propaganda pushing the idea that the largest sponsor of terrorism has been handed a crippling defeat. Identical rhetoric was used in 2025. But objectively speaking, it was the United States that colluded with Israel in 2025 to bomb Iran in the middle of peace negotiations. The same Trump administration then, and again in 2026, lied not merely to negotiators, but to the entire U.S. public, specifically their MAGA supporters. In both attacks on Iran, the establishment argued justification in the name of fighting terrorism, a word which describes the actions of the United States, even if it does apply to the Iranians. The lie about weapons of mass destruction is based on a nuclear program that has allowed international inspections, a nuclear program that has been monitored. Also supposedly crippled, but apparently not. A bomb that, if they did have it, they have failed to deploy it. A WMD that Iran would never detonate over the Holy Land anyway. Yet Israel has their own WMDs. They have them aimed at major capitals around the world as part of the Samson option. Imagine how the U.S. attacked a country that burns child sacrifice altars and generally protects churches and Christians, that just opened up a giant Christian metro station, but lets the country that sacrifices children literally on that altar, bombs churches, and spits on Christians dictate its foreign policy via Christian propaganda and blackmail. Christ is king. Such deception is also the motto of Israeli intelligence. Through deception, we wage war. And all of this was planned and decided by two Jews named Steve Witkoff, a lead negotiator over Ukraine, and Jared Kushner, heavily involved not only in staffing the Trump administration with Epstein colleague and Jew Howard Lutnick, but in overseeing both the destruction and lucrative reconstruction of Gaza. Because again, like the policy paper earlier said, you got to make money. The 2025 attack was named Operation Midnight Hammer, and the 2026 attack was called Operation Epic Fury. And this is the main part of the show. This is the core, so pay very close attention here. Although not officially the reason for the latter name choice, Furies are ancient, come from Greece, Erinyes, I believe, are ancient chthonic underworld goddesses of vengeance. As with the religious holy days and blood sacrifices above that can be correlated to wars or regime changes in Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, Syria, etc., Operation Epic Fury also took place during a rare convergence of religious and celestial events. It began in the middle of the Islamic holy month of Ramadan, the Christian season of Lent, and just 48 hours before the Jewish holiday of Purim, which commemorates the survival of Jews against an ancient Persian threat. For Muslims, escalation to war during the holy time of Ramadan is exceptionally offensive. That's the goal. For the Christians, Lent is supposed to be a time of self-reflection in relation to the temptation and sacrifice of their Savior, yet they have been propagandized into cheering for death and destruction in a foreign land at the behest of the Jewish media. For the Jews, the timing of the U.S. and Israeli attack on Iran bears symbolic meaning in Judaism, as I read to you from CNN earlier. I've already read that, so we won't read that again. Now, they reference Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy 25:17 says, "Remember what Amalek did to you on the way as you came out of Egypt." The story of Purim can be found in the later story told in the scroll or book of Esther. In Hebrew, the word Megillah or scroll, Megillah Esther, shares a root with gului. Don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. You can make fun of me for not pronouncing it right, but that is still the root of the word, meaning to reveal. While Esther stems from Hester, meaning hidden. In other words, the scroll of Esther means to reveal what is hidden. Purim is thus literally about, quote, revealing the hidden. In fact, the primary commandment of Purim is to hear the Megillah, that's the scroll, read aloud from a physical parchment scroll. Zakor, which is what they're reading, simply means remember. That's the part of Deuteronomy. Now, the Greek word apokalypsis from apokuluptine is where we obtain the word apocalypse. Although the word means to uncover or reveal the spiritual reality behind worldly events, particularly as they relate to the changing of the seasons for horses or the lifting of the veil of nature, it has become associated with cataclysmic events in a final earthly war called Armageddon. What is interesting and perhaps frightening to some is that the Purim ritual is derived from the revelation of the hidden found in the name of the scroll of Esther, the revelation of what's in that scroll, the revelation of what is hidden, the apocalypse. Purim and attacking Iran on this sacred time frame is the apocalypse, folks. It is. And there's many apocalypses because they just relate to nature and the soul. Armageddon is the battle inside of you. Armageddon is basically the Greek version of jihad. It's a battle inside. What's right and wrong? Attacking Iran on this date with the astronomical alignment, scroll of Esther, and then admitting that that's like what it is. CNN just openly says what it is. It's the apocalypse. They are positioning the pieces and creating the optics of Armageddon. Starting a war with these specific optics is akin to literally creating the optics of the apocalypse and eschaton. And so it's fitting that the strike on Iran began with more than just a general blood sacrifice. They began when, as BBC reported, Israel targeted children, killing now hundreds. There's video to back that up too. It's no coincidence that a few weeks prior, on February 11th, the Iranians celebrated the 1979 Islamic Revolution by burning statues of Baal. The Hebrew Lord bestowed, the title Lord bestowed on the idol of child sacrifice. You burn our idol, we kill your children. This religious ritual, this religious warfare and blood sacrifice was amplified by that rare 6-planet alignment. February 28th, Mercury, Venus, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune all aligned in a cosmic arch in the sky. These 6 planets geometrically correspond to the 6 points of the hexagram erroneously bequeathed only to the Jews in the Western world. Now, I know that what I've just explained to you is weightful and profound. I know that it is something that literally nobody else in the media is talking about. Yet this show will be virtually unavailable to the mass majority of people that even look for content like this, because this doesn't sell. What sells is I'm glad he's dead, not I was lied to by Trump. I was lied to by the Israelis, by the American government. I was lied to over and over again. And yet I'm told the Iranians lie, which even if they do, I don't really care. I'm not an Iranian, but here's the problem. I was lied to by my own government. So I know that they lie. I know that the American government's lying. They lied in 2025. They're lying in 2026. I know they're lying. So the thing is, I don't trust anything they say. And that's what this is all about. That's what this is all based on. That's what the whole thing is about. But he's dead. The Iranian women are liberated. We've proved how that's all a total fabrication tonight. Even if it wasn't, it doesn't matter. The point is still the point. The point is this. It's none of our business. It doesn't concern us. It doesn't matter. We, as Americans, I think, are over this and are done with it. Because when I saw the responses on social media to what Trump said, it's like, you're a sellout, you're a Shabbat goy, you work for Israel, screw you, you pedophile. It's like even conservative people, it's across the board. And so how do they get labeled? They get labeled like the rest of us. They're enemies of the state, but not of America, because the image of America is false. The image that has been concocted and created, like what's an American? No. What an American has become is Israeli. That's why Shmuley and Trump officials say it's the United States of Israel, because we are a conquered, occupied country of a foreign state that promotes terrorism, pornography, illegal immigration, Marxism, and anything else that destroys the human spirit. And that's why they are the synagogue of Satan. And you can say, well, it's just, you just can't get over that hatred of Jews. Again, motherfucker, it's not a hatred of Jews, you dumb piece of fucking shit. You know what it is? It's you being incapable of learning and educating yourself. It's you being illiterate. The problem is ego. The problem is like your own personal biases. This is true. I know they don't educate women there. Well, actually, they're more educated than American women are. That's just not true. Oh my God, that's not true. No, it is true. It's shockingly true. It's unbelievably true. We just base it all on assumptions because we know what the movies told us in the media. We don't need to look any deeper than that. I'm not going to read the Quran. It's an evil book. Well, guess what? I don't back the Quran either, any more than I back the Bible. It's just I want to have the book. I want to read it. What do they actually say? So I appreciate all of you listening to the Secret Teachings and what I actually have to say and what I can show you instead of what people would otherwise accuse me of being or accuse me of saying. And I think we've reached a point now where what I'm saying is kind of the majority. See, now we've really reached a dangerous point. Not only have we opened the Pandora's box, now we've reached a point where people are going to be like, well, you can't really trust those Republicans, so we're going to have to vote for Democrats now. And then you're going to get those liberal billionaires that Charlie Kirk was killed by, and you're going to get the real Marxism. You're going to get the real revolution. That's the pendulum swinging the other way. I said that too, not because I'm a prophet, but because that's history. That's how it works. Thank you so much for tuning in tonight. I really appreciate it wherever you're listening around the world. Quite a few people tuned in for this, even though it was just kind of suddenly. This show is our Monday, March 2nd show. Apocalypse of Esther. That's the name of the show. Amalek and Purim. I hope you enjoyed the show. You got something out of it. I hope that you'll go and grab a copy of my new book, Protocols of Goyim. It is a very, very large book. And hey, you can look inside of it. We got actual high resolution documents. It's probably hundreds of them in here. We also have actually, here's that Barbara Butch paper. Where's that at? I just saw it. Oh, we got the 9/11 stuff in here too. We got a lot of good stuff in this book. I just saw Barbara Butch. Where was she? Maybe she's so big I'm overlooking her. I don't know. It was in here somewhere at the Olympics. Anyway, that's the book. You can see inside of it, there's a lot of scripture. There's a lot of text, a lot of documents. You can kind of see it's pretty small text. So this is a very compact book. All the resources at the end. Protocols of Goyim, a Kosher Conspiracy. It is a very, very thick book. Get a copy now. tstradio.info. artiegable@yahoo.com is the email. Listen to the free archive. If you've already done that, thank you so much. Know that I don't put the ads in there. And of course, the archive that is not free that you have to subscribe to. It's $50 for the whole year. Probably should increase it, but trying to keep things affordable. If you would like to support the show, please subscribe. And if you do want to donate, I don't ask for donations. We don't take anything on YouTube, but if you do want to donate, please use Cash App. Or there is a PayPal option if you really want to send the show money and help with the financial aspects of the show and you can't figure it out, just email me. Otherwise, it's pretty straightforward. tstradio.info. All the links there, all the links below. Thank you, Flux, Jackie. I don't think I mentioned you, Cole Cushman. Thank you for joining us in the chat room tonight. Cindy is also here. I don't think I mentioned Cindy earlier. Cindy, thank you for joining us. As well as, here, Cole actually brought up a good point. When I just shared the Iranian women in science headline with a liberal thinking person, they took it as that's how oppressed American women are. Yeah, it's kind of funny. Oppression. They make them wear things. Well, our society kind of convinces people to not wear anything. I don't know which one's more oppressive. But then they don't have the choice. Well, I mean, do American women really have the choice? Because if you dress really nice, you're gonna kind of be looked at weird. Like I just went for a walk the other day. I saw a Japanese girl walking down the street. She looked like she was in Victoria, England. If you walk down the street like that in America, people be like, "What are you, a faggot?" My God, I was in Boise, Idaho. People used to heckle me for sitting on a park bench reading. "What are you reading for, faggot?" That's what our culture has cultivated. It's really, really sad. So we'll bomb them and then we'll give them the choice of not having a choice so they can be in Israeli porn videos. That actually is the most, one last thing here. The most views that I've ever gotten on X ever just happened over the weekend when I said, I don't really consider it liberation. I kind of consider it a deliberation. And it kind of looks to me like what's happening here is that we're injecting the idea of feminism. And then these girls can have their clothing taken off and they can be put into Israeli porn videos. I got 31,000 views on that. I couldn't believe it. Almost 1,000 hearts. That's pretty crazy. It's all factually verifiable. Man, the bots are out in full force, aren't they? Whew, oh boy. Sonny, thank you for joining us. The Cub, Brad, Pitbull, thank you for joining us. Joe Ryder, thank you for joining us. Jackie, I think I mentioned you again. Dove, thank you for joining us. And so on and so forth. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. tstradio.info. Let's go back and play. I wonder if I can play that song again. Yeah, let's play that Payday Monsanto song again. Iraq was just an hors d'oeuvre. Do you understand? Have a great night.
Your call is important to us. Please continue to hold, and we'll be with you shortly.
Thank you for holding. How can I be of service to you today?
Yes, I have this recurring charge on my monthly statement, and I can't figure out what it's for.
Well, we'll certainly do our best to help you. What does the charge say on your statement?
Well, it's a $275 charge, and it just says Iraq War.
Yes, ma'am, that is correct. The Iraq War cost the average American family over $16,000 since the war started.
Are you kidding? Well, I never signed up for that.
I'm sorry, ma'am. You don't sign up for the Iraq War charge.
Tell me, have you enjoyed your war so far?
It's a standard charge for all Americans.
Have you gotten a picture of who they are?
Well, that doesn't make any sense.
Did some men in a cave knock down your tower?
While you're still in line, can I interest you in our new monthly Iran War charge?
No, you
Are you gonna behave or lay next to flowers?
Thanks for calling the United States.
Wake up, sleepyhead. It's after 8, you're late. Get out of bed. Fuck what a spectator said. Scientific dictatorship straight ahead. Rise and shine, sleepyhead. It's after 8, you're late. Get out of bed. This is a bucket of water on your head. You're asleep. You might as well be dead.
Thanks for holding. How can I help you today?
Yes, I've been on the phone over and over with you guys trying to get this recurring charge for the Iraq War off my statement.
Iraq was just an hors d'oeuvre. Do you understand?
$16,500 my family's paid so far since the war began.
They are openly planning to neuter Iran.
I just can't afford to pay it anymore. I've lost my job.
Do you like to see children get killed in your name?
Well, I'm sorry to hear that, but that doesn't mean you get to stop paying the charge.
When you're paying your taxes, you're playing their game. You better wake up. Wake up, sleepyhead. It's after 8, you're late. Get out of bed. Fuck what a spectator said. Scientific dictatorship straight ahead. Rise and shine, sleepyhead. It's after 8, you're late. Get out of bed. This is a bucket of water on your head. You're asleep. You might as well be dead.
But we're making America safer. We have to fight them over there.
Will you ever just stop and listen to what you're saying?
No, sir.